All right, let's go. The problems that we face here in America today, it's not an America issue. It's a global issue. Everyone in the world is fighting the same exact battle. The rest of us, normal people out in the world, we don't want that. We don't want to be bothered. Just let us live our damn lives. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the pod. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the live. Appreciate everyone joining us today. The biggest thing that separates this country from every other country in the world is the ability to have free speech. The ability to express your ideas, even if you're right or you're wrong. And the first thing they do when they try to gain control, the first thing that they do when they try to take away your freedoms and your liberties is to start picking away at your right of free speech. The guest today that we have is a special one, famous, infamous. Some would call him, on one side, they call him the leader of the insurrection. They call him a threat, a danger to democracy. On the other side, they say he is a martyr for the republic. And then you have some people in the middle say, I feel like maybe he's controlled opposition. Everyone has their own view on him depending on what your matrix shows you, based on what your algorithm is feeding you. But the reality is, what we know here, what we believe here, what we believe in this channel, what we believe on this page, what we believe in our free thinker movement is that you need to think for yourself, is that the narrative and the media narrative and what they tell you is not always true. If it's a war, if it is a war of information, if it is war of agenda, if it is a war of propaganda, and on one side are the conspiracy theorists, and on the other side are the sheeple. And if we're keeping track based on hit rate, the conspiracy theorists, they're kind of winning that thing. So if you believe what I believe, which is that we should be able to hear all sides, that we should be able to open up our minds and have the opportunity to entertain the other side, to entertain other things in life, to understand and figure things out for yourself. Because again, they're never going to tell us the truth. If you believe that, welcome. Welcome to the movement. Welcome to the Free Thinker Army. We are accepting of everyone. If you don't agree with me, amazing. If you agree with me, amazing. As long as you're willing to have an open mind, you're welcome. A couple ground rules before we start, because there's a very good chance that as the stream goes, we will get different trolls and bots coming to the chat. We love the chat. We engage the chat. We actively encourage you to be a part of the chat. We will be entertaining questions and comments from the chat, so get involved. But if you're going to spam, you got to go. I just got to set that clear now, because it's not because I don't agree with you. I agree. Everyone has a right to voice their opinion, whether I agree or not. Lastly, after this interview and after this conversation is over, it will only be live on Rumble for obvious reasons. And if you've noticed, I haven't even said his name yet. And that's how crazy this world is that if I were to start this interview, start this conversation, and I were to start it on YouTube, and I said his name in the first 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, they'd probably take it down immediately. That's how crazy this world is. And because of that, and they say you can't talk about him, you can't talk to him, I'm more interested. So, a quick word from our first sponsor that we have. I just want to plug him, and then we'll get right into it. Give me a minute. Check this out. As always, we want to thank our sponsors who support our show for Free Thinkers. This month's sponsor is GarageID.com. Garage ID is built for the automotive and motorsports enthusiast. Whether you love cars, race cars, bikes, motorcycles, ATVs, ATX, boats, planes, or even drones, if it's in your garage, it should be in Garage ID. So you can get discounts on parts, services, or even find sponsors for your ride. Check out GarageID.com and get back on the road.
The January 6th attacker, known as the QAnon Shaman, is trying to take the notoriety of his conviction all the way into the halls of Congress. He's running for office from Arizona. NBC's Ryan Riley has the latest reporting for us. Tell us what's going on with this, Ryan.
Yeah, so QAnon Shaman is sort of this failed actor who is very big on media attention. And so Jacob Chansley is now sort of trying to pivot that into becoming running for Congress and, of course, returning to the place where he committed his crime on January 6th that he was sentenced for. He ultimately was in the Senate chamber, but now, he's looking to go to the House, apparently. So, it's remarkable to look at these videos of what happened on January 6th. And, of course, you saw some of this afterwards get sucked into a conspiracy theory about what QAnon Shaman actually did and what Jacob Chansley actually did. But from the very beginning, you can see on those videos him entering the building right behind this initial breach of the mob and then taking the dais that belonged to former Vice President Pence and leaving a threatening note for him. So he was one of the first people to go to trial, or rather to take a plea deal and be sentenced, and ultimately got a sentence that has now left him out to run again in 2024. So quite a remarkable turn of events, but it remains to be seen whether or not he's actually going to pick up any traction or whether this is just sort of another media stunt for him, as he has sort of done throughout the years, Chris.
It is where we are in this world. Ryan Riley, thank you.
So, Jake, dude, welcome to the stream. Welcome to the pod. I appreciate you being here.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I got to ask, before we start, I think there's some people here that just know you by name or know you by picture, but they don't have a lot of context. And I've tried my best to not watch, and you've done a few interviews. I tried my best to not watch any of them, because if I watch them, I feel like I would have bias going into this. And I wanted to have as honest and open a conversation as possible without bias. So I have to ask, why the getup on January 6th?
Well, I've been dressing that way for over 10 years. So only when it fit the Mockingbird media's narrative did they choose to highlight my image and give me any sort of public notoriety whatsoever.
So you love using that word, Mockingbird
media.
Yeah. A little bit of context. I'm familiar with the Operation Mockingbird, but maybe for those that aren't familiar, maybe we just at least introduce them to that idea.
So, well, first, let me just ask, how is the speech? Is there lag with this?
I don't know, chat. How does it look? How does it sound? Let us know. We love to incorporate the chat. If you are in the chat in YouTube, if you're in the chat on Twitter, because we're multi-streaming right now, the main chat's in Rumble. Come out, hang out in Rumble. And if there's a lag, let us know.
I just want to make sure that we're good right in the beginning. I don't want it to go too long. Anyway, Operation Mockingbird is when the CIA infiltrated the major media outlets in the 60s and the 70s to control the narrative regarding the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement. Now, the thing is that it is still in full swing. In fact, it's only gotten more intense as time goes on. I'm sure you've seen that video. This is very dangerous to our democracy. This is very dangerous to our democracy. Yeah. So that is a perfect example of Operation Mockingbird being in full swing, because what happened is that somebody got on a computer or somebody sent out a memo and they said, you're going to read this over all your platforms. And that was on all of these local news stations across the country. And this is how the minds of the American public are controlled, through the dissemination of propaganda.
And it's crazy because when I look at the headlines and I look at what's going on, they said that you were mentally unstable. They said that you were suffering from a multiple personality disorder. I mean, a lot of isms were thrown at you. And even in just the 2 minutes that we've spoken, you seem extremely coherent, extremely intelligent, very well spoken. And I'm a little taken aback because I don't know what I expected, but you're much more well spoken probably than I am, you know?
Oh, come now. I think you do a pretty good job. I really liked your intro.
Thank you. But that's what we were told. We were told that you were off the rocker. How did that make you feel? And what's it like being known as that guy?
Well, my previous attorney, Albert Watkins, which much of the Mockingbird media still says he's my attorney. He's not. William Shipley. Bill Shipley is my current attorney. Albert Watkins chose to go with that narrative, which is largely based on a lie. He told the media that I was schizophrenic, bipolar, depressed, and delusional, none of which was in my psychological evaluation that was given to me by a federal psychologist in Colorado. None of those things. In fact, the antithesis of that is true. In my psychological evaluation, it said that I was not being diagnosed with schizophrenia and that I was not delusional. So why he chose to say that, I don't know. He never had my permission to say those things. And once I found out, I was extremely upset. And that is part of the reason why I ended up firing him near the end of the court proceedings after my sentencing.
So is that something that he just did by himself?
He,
That's just something that he did. That's just something that he did by himself. And was that part of his defense? Do you think? Do you feel like he was actually trying to win?
I really don't know. I think that it's entirely possible that it could be one of two things. He had his own agenda, or that he was trying to get me a reduced sentence. But neither of those things matter in the context that it's not true.
Do you feel like, even though his method may not have been something you agreed with, do you feel like he was on your side?
No. I feel like he was on his own side, to be perfectly honest with you. He said all sorts of things on my behalf that I never said. I never said I felt duped by Trump. Never said I denounced Q or the Anon community. Never said that. I don't recall ever having a conversation with him where he says, would you be willing to testify in Congress against Trump with the J6 committee? And he just told me that that's what he told the press. And I'm just like, okay. Why? And why would they want to hear from me? I don't have anything to tell them.
Do you think, we mentioned just a little bit of Q, and for a lot of people, there are some people that watch that are like, that understand it, right? And there are other people that only have heard and seen the headlines. And because it's not the easiest to find, you have to kind of go deep within the internet to kind of gather, and you have to have a little bit of understanding on how the internet works and even to consume the content. If you had to give a summary of what you think it is, what do you think that would be?
Well, let's start with the notion that QAnon is a fiction that was created by the Mockingbird media to discredit Q and the Anons that follow Q. So there's Q, and then there's the Anons that follow Q. And the Mockingbird media created a straw man. They created QAnon as a means of discrediting Q and the Anons. Now, with that being said, if you look into the Q drops and the numerical code, along with the timestamps between Donald Trump's tweets and Q's drops, and you also look at what's called the Q clock, which is basically like a clock, 12 numbers, and above each of those numbers are different dates. And if you look at the dates and then you end up going to the Q drops on those dates and you line all those dates and all those Q drops sequentially above each of the numbers, then you end up getting a much larger message that had been parceled out over many months, over many years. So if you look at the numerical code, if you look at the Q clock, if you look at the timestamps, then what you end up seeing is a very sophisticated cryptological pattern. It's very similar to the cryptology and the encryption of military intelligence and the way that they communicate in plain sight without the enemy being able to know what it is exactly that they are saying. So Q is a psychological operation. What is a psychological operation? A psychological operation is an operation that's intended to influence the psychology or influence the psyche of large groups of people, nations, states, etc. So what we have with the Mockingbird media is a psyop. It is a psychological operation designed to influence the minds of the people through propaganda. Propaganda that is largely divisive, You have CNN and MSNBC on this side. You have Fox News and Newsmax on this side. And they're both fighting one another over the narratives that they are given by the top of the pyramid. You see, so you have these divisive talking points, and you have the people that choose to believe each of these misinformation narratives. And then they argue with one another, they fight with one another over which of these narratives is true, when the fact of the matter is neither one of them is fully true. What has happened is that you've taken small amounts of information and you've combined it with large amounts of disinformation to create a misinformation narrative that the people that control the Mockingbird media then control. And through that misinformation, they control the people. When it comes to Q was circumventing the Mockingbird media. Q was creating a narrative that largely was based around a couple of things. Number one, the debt-based fiat currency that we all use. Number two, child and human trafficking, the modern-day slave trade. And number three, how it is that debt-based currency and the child and human trafficking rings, slave trade, is used to blackmail individuals in government or bribe them into submission. You see, so people like Jeffrey Epstein are a great example. Multi-billionaire, flying people to his island, compromising them in certain scenarios with children or with drugs or with large sums of money, etc. And this is how it is that intelligence agencies, because let us not forget, Jeffrey Epstein was Mossad. He was also working with CIA. Okay. This is how it is that intelligence agencies abroad, and that also includes CCP, KGB, Russian intelligence, you name it, the MI6, this is how they compromise people. And then this is how they get them to submit to this globalist New World Order, one world government agenda. So Q is one psyop that is trying to get this truth to the people about the debt-based fiat currency, about the child and human trafficking, about blackmail and bribery in government and Jeffrey Epstein and how governments are controlled. And then the Mockingbird media is the other side, this other psyop that is designed to divide people based on misinformation. Notice they don't talk about the debt-based fiat currency. They don't talk about child and human trafficking. They don't talk about people like Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, they suppressed the Jeffrey Epstein story for years. So then you have these dueling psychological operations that are basically fighting over the minds of the people of the United States and the world.
And a lot of that makes sense to me. I feel like a lot of those topics are things that we talk about normally. I just don't think we assign a name or a label to it, right? But the ideas are very similar. But if you're the other side, and if you are sheeple, or if you are, I don't want to say sheeple, because if there are two sides and there are people on the opposing side of the war, you can understand how this sounds like crazy to them. And if it's a war, are we trying to beat them? Are you trying to convince them? Are you trying to wake them up? Are you trying to bring them over? Are we trying to crush them? How do you perceive this battle going?
Well, all psychological warfare is based on a couple of things. Number one, neuro-linguistic programming. That is the use of words to create a pattern in the subconscious portions of the brain. And because the subconscious portions of the brain are based on instinctual responses, and because the subconscious portion of the brain is 95 to 93% of our brain activity, if you can control a person's subconscious pattern, you can control their conscious perception of reality, because most of the dominant brain activity is controlling the conscious perception. And the easiest way to program a person's subconscious is through creating a propaganda campaign using trigger words and trigger images combined together to create an instinctual response regarding either one, fear of death, number two, the desire to procreate. This is why sex sells. And number three, and this is the way that it's most often used, is in advertising to separate people from their money and stimulate their hunger. So ba-da-ba-ba-ba, right? So little jingles, little symbols, colors, and stuff like that, they stimulate hunger. So this is the most common form of NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. And it's designed, in this case, to stimulate hunger. Thus, you are separated from your money buying trash that you put in your body that actually makes you dumber, by the way. So when we get into the next phase of psychological warfare, what we're talking about is neurolinguistically programming millions of people. Now, the way that you do that is through something called critical factor bypass. What that basically is where you saturate all of the media outlets with a very specific message. So this means magazines, newspapers, television, internet, social media, you name it, in politics, etc., in schools, okay? And you repeat this message over and over and over and over again until it is programmed into the subconscious portion of the brain, because the subconscious portion of the brain believes that because it's everywhere in the environment, it must be true. And then that narrative gets socially reinforced by the people. This is why Yuri Bezmenov, the ex-KGB agent that defected to the United States and was in charge of psychological warfare for the Soviet Union, what they called ideological subversion. This is why he said that most of the time ideological subversion is done by Americans to Americans. So because we're social creatures, we don't want to be socially ostracized. So we just say, okay, yeah, sure, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Okay, we need to do something about that. Or yeah, Osama bin Laden, 9/11, terrorism, Al Qaeda. Yeah, let's go get them. You see, so that's, or COVID. 2 weeks to stop the spread. Wear a mask, right? You see, and they kind of like they did with that MSNBC thing, until government shutdown, they have the numbers on the screen and they have them in certain colors and stuff so that your eyes are drawn to them, and they're ticking, just like what they did with COVID. The numbers of deaths, the numbers of cases, all these things were right there on the screen for you. And they're saying Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that, anti-mask this, anti-mask that, super spreaders, blah, 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 blah. And they also use words like deadly, virus, terrifying, et cetera, to stimulate these instinctual responses. And then this narrative becomes socially reinforced. And now neurolinguistic programming and critical factor bypass lead to the third portion of psychological warfare. And that's what's called mass formation hypnosis or mass formation psychosis. And this is where 25 to 30% of the people in the country believe that the propaganda that they are consuming is reality, that it's real. And then they become radicalized based on the emotional responses that are triggered by these instinctual responses in the subconscious mind. And then they move toward the radical agenda that was hoped for by those that created the propaganda campaign in the first place.
But I'm just going to play a little bit of devil's advocate for you, okay? Sure. If you were the other side, and you were one of the people trying to take control of the world because you feel like your way of life is better, and we know that it's a war of ideology, war of the way you think, the way you perceive the world. If you're on the other side, isn't this exactly what you should do?
Well, here's the thing.
Because
you can use these techniques. You can use these techniques to get the truth out to the people.
Because they're effective.
These are techniques. Yeah, because they are effective. Exactly.
So, I mean, if this is war, and this is kind of the grounds of war, and we understand that this is what's going on. I mean, what else would they do? Isn't that what they were supposed to do anyway? I mean, what else are they supposed to do? Be like, oh no, we're lying. We're going to tell you the truth. Actually, we're just trying to hope that you guys stay home because we want to change the way things are. They're not going to say that because it wouldn't be effective. Isn't this expected of for a lack of the word, expected of the enemy?
Well, yes. And so this is where we get into something called full spectrum dominance. Okay. That is a military term. And you were talking about earlier about like labels and you say a lot of the same things on your show. You just don't have the label for it. And this is why it's so important to have an understanding of these labels and their definitions, because when you understand the labels and the definitions, then you can actually start to cognitively grasp, you can syntactically place together the reality that you're living in. So full spectrum dominance is a military term that means a control over every aspect of the lives of the people. But it's comprised of a number of things, starting first with the control of the minds of a group or a nation. And you do this through psychological warfare techniques, which we just delineated. Now, from control of the psyche of the populations, you then get control of the land, the seas, the air and the airspace, subterranean, deep underground military bases, extraterrestrial, space and satellites, bio and chemical agents, technology, cell phones, cell phone towers, computers, televisions, radio, Wi-Fi, etc., the monetary system, the medical apparatus, the food supply, the water supply, etc. So if the people that are trying to create a global one world government are going to attempt to take over the world, they first must attempt to take over the minds of the people of the world. And so that's why Q is such a spit in the face to these people, because now, and this is something I forgot to bring up about mass formation hypnosis or psychosis. If 5% or more of the country does not believe that the propaganda that they are being told is real, and they stand up and say, no, this is crazy, you're not going to do this. So we saw examples of mass formation hypnosis or psychosis in Nazi Germany, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Red Revolution in China, etc. If 5% or more of those populations had stood up and said no, and stood firm and said no, then the mass formation hypnosis could not occur. So that's part of the reason why I think Q was implemented, because these individuals understood neuro-linguistic programming, critical factor bypass, mass formation hypnosis, and how it is that it could be diffused. Because we have far more than 5% in the United States and abroad that believe that the Mockingbird media is filled with lies, that believe that the governments of the world are corrupt, that believe that financial institutions, big banks, or things like big pharma and stuff, that these things are corrupt. So their agenda is not seeping into the minds of a large enough portion of the population for their global takeover of our minds and all of our resources to take place.
I feel like I'm following. I understand. I get it. But I also enjoy this type of stuff. This is why it's something for a very niche market and niche part of the country, right? The whole country isn't ready for this. How do we go about making it more consumable? Because there's a lot of big words, and it takes a little bit of explanation. It's like trying to educate people on a topic that they didn't even know existed. And I feel like there has to be a way to make it more consumable, make it easier, because when you say it in such long form, people are like, oh, I don't understand what he's talking about. Sounds kind of crazy to me. And you can see that. How do you make it more consumable for people?
Entertainment. And this is why Hollywood was infiltrated to control our entertainment. What's really funny is that a lot of the stuff in Hollywood is actually a form of soft disclosure. They are actually kind of telling you the tech that they have or the plans that they have. I mean, think about how many movies were out there regarding a viral outbreak, right? Think about how many movies before the 9/11 attacks were about Islamic radicalism and terrorism. I can think of one right off the bat, True Lies, and there's many others. So this is how they program people subconsciously for these things to occur. So if that can be done to set people up for failure, it can also be done to set people up for success.
So I just want to bring it back to maybe a little bit of January 6th real quick before we go too down these big rabbit holes, because they're kind of rabbit holes. I just want to make it a little bit consumable for people around. Maybe some easy questions first, just to change the pace. How long were you in prison?
27 months total in prison, 29 months in federal custody, 10 and a half months in solitary confinement.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it was not easy.
What is it like being in a federal prison, being the personality that you are? Because I'm sure when you walked in that door, everyone knew who you were. You had to be famous. Were you popular? Were you like, I can't believe this guy is here? Or like, oh, I mean, you would think that most prisons are lean a certain way. I'm curious.
Well, look at it like this. How many guards, how many corrections officers in the federal system or in any jail do you think voted for Biden? Right? And how many federal inmates do you think like the federal government? So I wasn't treated poorly, really, by the COs or by the inmates. The only place that I ever experienced any real backlash or any real, I guess, prejudice would be in the DC jail and the DC gulag. I had never experienced racism until I went to the DC jail. And it's because they believed the Mockingbird media talking points. They thought I was some racist, white supremacist Trump supporter. And what's funny is there was guys in prison as well, in particular among the minority communities, you know, Mexicans, blacks, Asians, that watched things like CNN. And when they saw that I was on the yard, they were still curious. So after talking to me for 5 minutes, they're like, this guy's not racist. This guy's not crazy. Like, what the hell's on this television that I'm watching? What am I, you know, what is this? So I taught a metaphysics class when I was in prison.
Really?
I taught a metaphysics class. I was in the RDAP community, residential drug abuse program, because I was honest with the pre-sentence investigator when they asked me about my past usage of things like hallucinogenic mushrooms and stuff. And I said, yeah, I ate it a handful of times in my life. And so that was enough for the BOP to say, you have to do RDAP. You have to do residential drug abuse program. And so I was like, okay, you know, fine. I'll use it to help some addicts. I'll use it to improve some lives. And that's exactly what I did, because I'm not a drug addict by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. I met real drug addicts and holy crap, you know. So I'll say this. The government could have made my life a whole lot worse. Now, 10 and a half months in solitary confinement is not fair. 10 and a half months in solitary confinement should be reserved for things like child molesters and rapists.
And when you say solitary confinement, are you literally by yourself the entire time, or is it what they call it, but there's a little bit of connection and with other people?
22-hour lockdown. There were 6 people in the pod, the area that I was in, and we were on a rotation where, you know, every day we would have a different time that we came out of our cells for 2 hours. But, you know, look, jail and prison is not the place to make friends. It's also not the place to make enemies, but it's definitely not the place you want to like hook up and hang out later. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, there's not a lot of like, there's some good people in prison. I'll say that. Some good people that made some bad choices, but for the most part, I kept to myself. And 22-hour lockdown, 2 hours out of the cell to either watch television, use the telephone, or shower.
Do you still keep in touch? Because I would assume that after, 3 years? 3.5 years there? 3 years?
No. 27 months total behind bars. 10 and a half was in solitary. I did about, I think 15 months or so in actual federal prison.
And I would assume that during that time, you'd had some pretty interesting, honest conversations with people. I'm sure that you got to think that amongst the people in jail that you would skew on the more intelligent and awake side. I'm sure there's a lot of people going, damn, this guy showed up and it's not what I expected. Kind of changed my life, changed the way I see the world. Do you communicate with any of them?
Oh, no. Well, it's, you know, it's a part of my supervised release that I don't have any contact with felons. But even if I did, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think it would be good for me or for them to have any contact with these individuals, even if I wasn't on supervised release. The government's going to be watching me the rest of my life. And, you know, I'm probably on some sort of like terrorist watch list for airports and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
So then, honest question for me and you to have this conversation, for you and I to converse and to now be in each other's networks of people, am I on the list?
Well, considering some of the things you've said before, you're probably already on it. I'm just saying, like some of the things that you've said, and this is why what you said in the beginning is so important about free speech. Because if you can be put on a list for just saying you believe in free speech, for saying that you believe in our constitutional rights, then we have a problem. I mean, we literally have people out there that are planning terrorist attacks, that are bringing drugs and children across the border, that are murdering people, raping people, trading in child pornography, all sorts of evil stuff. And for whatever reason, our government, our tax dollars, our government's using our tax dollars to go after or spy on people that want their constitutional, unalienable, God-given rights.
I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? Even right before we started the stream, my wife called me and she said, "Do you really have to do this?" I said, "What do you mean? Like, this can be so much fun. I'm so excited." And she's like, "We have a daughter, you have a family, you have to be responsible for a family. And like, there's no reason to attract more attention. What if a group of people on one other side of the aisle decide that you're a danger and they come after us? What if they do this? What if they decide, the government decides to show up, because you always talk about creating community, talk about creating a movement, creating an army. What if they put you on a list and they come after you?" And I thought about it because I was like, damn. At first I was upset at her. I said, "Why do you have to say that right before I go on this? Because I'm going to do it anyway." I have to say it because and I get it. From the perspective of a mother, perspective of a wife, I understand her heart. I do. But I thought about it. And I was like, the fact that you think these things in your mind, that's why I do what I do. Because you shouldn't have these thoughts. Just the idea that you think that you can't say these things, and because I want to have a conversation with someone that they say that is not a good person, from what I've seen, he doesn't seem that crazy. If anything, if he's damn crazy, I think it's more interesting. Why can't I talk? Even if he's the worst human in the whole world, why can't I talk to him? And I was like, all right, I got to do it. And this is why I have to do it, because she literally feels the fear in her heart that something could go wrong if we talk. And this is the only way I could prove to her that it's not true. And I think that's what more people have to do. We need to have these conversations. Again, everyone doesn't agree on everything. And if everyone agreed, then you'd be a part of the PSYOP no matter what, because they want everyone to agree. Both sides want you to agree with everything they say 100%. The only way to break free from that is to just question. And here we question everything, because I think it's not only our right, it's our responsibility, it's our duty to question. So it's been an interesting thing. I mean, she said, "No, you really have to do it. You really have to do it." I was like, I have to. The more you say you have to do it, I have to do it, you know?
Well, I admire your courage, and God bless you for, being willing to take time, because a lot of people won't. I think they're either afraid of the system, or they're afraid of the backlash from the people that are in their audience. And that is exactly what the deep state wants. They don't want us communicating. They don't want us talking. They don't want people to hear what I have to say. You know what I mean? What they want is to control people's minds, control people's perceptions. And that's why the propaganda campaign against me was so intense, I think. Not just because of the way I was dressed, but I think it's because once they realized the things that I had to say.
Because if you didn't dress the way you dressed when you showed up that day, there's a very good chance none of this would have happened. Right? You would have been maybe an asterisk on that day with a lot of people that ended up just kind of being an asterisk. You are the poster child from both sides. Again, we started with some people think you're a martyr for the Republic, and the other say you are a threat and danger to democracy. And no one can agree. what that even means on either side. Because one side, it's democracy, democracy, democracy. You mean mob rule. On the other side, it's a republic, it's republic. Well, we're not really voting for the best people, best qualified people to make our decisions. So it's not exactly true either. Both are, we need to redefine what both mean, maybe. How do we change that?
Well, and the fact is, dude, we don't live in a constitutional republic really anymore. Yeah. And we certainly don't live in a democracy. We actually live in more of like a fascist oligarchic commune of sorts, because what has happened is that international corporations, international banking cartels have monopolized our currency, our resources, and our labor, and they have used government's monopoly on the initiation of force to do so. And that's pretty much exactly what fascism is. It's the blend of corporate interest and government enforcement.
I want to talk to you about this idea that you're going to run for Congress. Before we do that, I feel like we need to involve the chat. I love the chat. I think the chat is integral to what I do, because none of what I do online or here on, it's not possible with the movement of people behind me. It's people that are like thinkers, that are free thinkers, that question the narratives around the world. And I want to give them an opportunity to ask some questions. So maybe we could take just a handful of questions from a few people. The guys in the Discord have been chatting and writing down questions like all day. As soon as I said that you're gonna have one, they were like, "We ask this." I said, "Dude, get in the chat and ask yourself." So maybe we'll do a couple questions, give them opportunity to get involved, and then I want to talk about your potential or Congress run that looks like it's actually happening.
Yeah, it is happening. It is happening. I have to get the signatures to be on the ballot, but it is happening. And you know, one thing I really quick I want to say is the big names that are out there that feel like they have a lot to lose, they don't really want to necessarily talk to me. They want to talk about me. And the people that are in their audience, they do want to talk to me. They want to ask me questions. But a lot of these other people are afraid that they'll lose all the stuff that they worked for. When I think that the opposite is true. I think that they'll actually gain more interest. They'll gain more followers. They will gain more attention if they are willing to take the chance and just have a conversation.
Yeah, I think people just live their lives so scared, you know, and everything is tied. We're in a clicks and views economy, and everything is tied to your clicks and views. And the fact of the matter is that tech companies have the ability to turn off your livelihood and throttle it, or just shut you off or kick you off. And it sucks because you are beholden to your tech masters, and it's just going to get worse. And they control what you think, they control what you see. So I think that's why we try to keep a community. We try to build a base of people that think freely. And then if we get kicked off of YouTube, no big deal. We'll go to Rumble. If we get kicked off Rumble, we'll create our own server. If we get kicked off of Instagram, we'll go to Twitter. If we get kicked off of Twitter, we'll send each other letters. You know what I mean? There are ways to be able to communicate. And I think that's why we try to stay flexible. And I think that's important. If you guys have a few questions that you really want to get in, you know, don't spam with questions, because there's no way we can get through all of them. But if you got one or two that are really pressing your heart at this moment, why don't you guys throw it in the chat, and then we'll get it in, and then we will get into your Congress run, and then maybe we'll go down a little bit deep on some rabbit holes. And I don't know how much time you have, but if you have time, maybe we'll also have a little bit of fun.
All for it.
All right, let's see here. In retrospect, from the Jeff Roach. Jeff Roach is an avid part of our community. He makes all of our artwork on a volunteer basis. We love Jeff. Do you think the Capitol Police purposely entrapped you?
No, I do believe that January 6th was a setup on behalf of really high levels of the deep state, whether that be people like the Pentagon, people at the FBI, people like the chief intelligence officer for the Capitol Police, Yogananda Pittman. None of these entities gave any intel to former Capitol Police Chief Sund. And therefore, because he didn't have the intel that they had, for example, the Pentagon had reason to believe that there were going to be over a dozen known terrorists in the crowd on January 6th. The FBI had what they considered to be a plot by the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. All of this stuff, according to former Capitol Police Lieutenant Tarek Johnson, all of this stuff was known by Yogananda Pittman, and she didn't do anything. She didn't tell Capitol Police Chief Sund. None of these other entities said anything to him. None of them in their emails, nothing. And then when he asked for the National Guard, which, by the way, Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell changed the rules so that he had to have their permission in order to invoke the National Guard. So they basically stripped him of his emergency powers. So all of these things indicate a setup. He wasn't able to call the National Guard before or during without their permission. So and they said the whole reason why they didn't want to give him the National Guard in the first place was because there was a lack of evidence and that it would be bad optics. So I think that it was a setup on behalf of the deep state. And then the deep state used that setup to create the PSYOP. And then the PSYOP was then used to go after Trump and his supporters, and in many cases deem his supporters to be domestic terrorists so that their constitutional rights could be circumvented through things like the Patriot Act.
When did you know, when you were leaving that day, that damn, I'm fucked? How long did it take you before you realized that this is going to go bad?
Well,
because from the video clips that I've seen, it looked like you were kind of walking around. It looked like it wasn't that crazy. You didn't look panicked on the videos that we saw.
Well, yeah, and that's because when I entered the building, one of the first things that I did is I stopped people from stealing from the break room. I was trying to help. The whole reason why the police were escorting me around the building was because I offered to help them stop vandalism, stop violence, stop theft inside the Senate chamber, help them clear the Senate chamber. That's why we were walking around together. That's why they let me in the chamber to begin with. And then as soon as we got out of the building, not too long afterward, Donald Trump put out his tweet telling everybody to go home. So I went up to the door. I stopped everybody from trying to break in, and I said, go home. Donald Trump said, go home. I played his video on my megaphone, told everybody, go home. Stop what you're doing. Go home. Stop. So I honestly thought when the FBI was looking for me, I was like, oh, crap. Well, it was just misdemeanors at the time. And I did not believe that the FBI would waste their time on misdemeanors. I was quite certain that they only went after people with serious felonies, that it would be a waste of government resources to go after people with misdemeanors. Little did I know. So then when I found out they were looking for me, I called them. And I was like, so I heard you guys are like looking for information on me. I heard you guys are looking for me. So what's up? I'm the guy, what's going on? And then they were asking me questions. I was on the phone with them for about an hour. And then we had set up a meeting. They said they just wanted to talk. I said, look, just tell me, am I going to get arrested? Just tell me. I'll still show up. I just want to know. And the FBI agent was like, no, I don't see a reason to arrest you. We just want to talk to you. And I was like, all right, well, and I showed up at the FBI field office in Phoenix on the 9th. And that was when they slapped the cuffs on me. And that was when I really started to fathom and grasp the totality of the situation that I was in.
Do you think that FBI agent that originally called you, they were lying to you, or they didn't think so either? Like how, because if she didn't believe, or he didn't believe that you were going to get arrested, then maybe it means it goes up pretty high. They're like, all right, just tell them to come and then we figure it out. Do you feel like that person was deceiving you and trying to get you to come in?
I really don't know. It's possible what you're saying is true. But it's also possible that he knew and lied to me. I've talked to Kyle Seraphin, the former FBI agent. I don't know if you know him or have had him on your show. He's got quite the story to tell. And he was basically saying, like, look, dude, whenever there was somebody that I was going to arrest, I would tell him straight up, yeah, I'm going to arrest you, but we can do this one way or another. We can do it the easy way or the hard way. So he was basically saying, I don't see what that FBI agent did was wrong. Because he said that he had the authority on whether or not he was going to arrest these people, or he at least knew that they were going to be arrested or not. You see, So I really don't know, dude. Considering the track record of the government's ability to tell the truth. You know, I don't know.
Do you think all of them are corrupt, or is it just a select few? Like how? Because we say the government's corrupt, government's corrupt, government's corrupt, right? But I don't feel like everyone's corrupt. I think there are people out there that legitimately think they're doing the right thing, and even if it's right or wrong, at least their heart is in the right place. And when I say corruption, I feel like that means knowingly deceitful versus unknowingly. I feel like there has to be some sort of divider there, right? If they are completely brainwashed into doing what they do and they had no idea they're doing it, it's tough. There's a lot of people in our lives that are unknowing sheeple. They have no clue. And you can't blame people that have no idea. But there are people that know and still do. How corrupt and how deep do you think it is? Like if you had to give a rough percentage to it.
Well,
Arbitrary number.
It's hard to say in context because a lot of people don't really fully understand the problem. So you don't have to corrupt the whole government for the government to be corrupt. You don't have to corrupt everything. What you have to do is you have to corrupt the key checks and balances portions of the government so that because those checks and balances portions are corrupted, you can circumvent them and consolidate power. You can centralize power through strategic corruption. Now, when we talk about things like the bureaucracy, people like Anthony Fauci have been in office for decades. Fauci was appointed by Ronald Reagan. Okay. Now, this is how these bureaucrats are appointed. The president appoints them. They go through like a grilling by the Senate or the House or the Congress. They go through these committees. They go through these grillings. I think it's the Senate. And then if they are approved, then they get appointed to these high levels in government. Now, if you corrupt the president and then you corrupt enough people within these Senate committees, within these hearings, then you can end up having somebody that is at the top of these bureaucracies, at the top of the pyramid, that stays in power for far longer than the elected officials that appointed them. You see? And then so during that time that they're in office at these really high levels that are actually behind the scenes, and in some cases are more powerful than the ones that are in front of the camera, in front of the scenes, then they are able to then exponentially grow the corruption from the top down. So they can start appointing people below them that go along with their corrupt little agenda, you see? And then the people at the base of the pyramid, they're just civil servants. They're just doing what they're told by their boss. And that's a large portion of the government. But when it comes to like the tippy top of the pyramid, that right there, those individuals are working in symbiosis with these corrupt checks and balances portions because they're beholden to the same people. International corporations, international banking cartels, international intelligence agencies.
Is it possible to have a good person in that top of the pyramid?
Oh, absolutely.
Are there?
Absolutely. Now, but the thing is that there are certain cases where some of these regulatory agencies did the right thing. There's no denying that. But then there's many other cases where what they did was atrocious and actually stood in the way of things like a cure for cancer, stood in the way of things like, patents that could have saved the environment a long time ago from massive amounts of forever chemical pollution. The EPA, how many people in the DEA and the FBI have been proven to be like working with cartels? You see what I'm saying? So it's a very nuanced issue. I can't really put a number on it, but I will say this. I will say that the amount of people that are in high levels of power is probably more like 80 to 90% are corrupt.
80 and 90.
Because in high levels, Yes. And what I mean by that is, when I say corrupt, is this, is that they know that what they're doing is unconstitutional. And they know that what they're doing is antithetical to the survival of our nation and the long-term survival of the people. I'll just give you an example. In Guam, there were large portions of the population that were coming down with all sorts of diseases. I think there was like things like MS and stuff like that, really specific diseases, neurological disorders, all sorts of stuff. And it turns out that the military had buried a bunch of drums of like chemicals and like things like mustard gas on the island. And then when this was all found, when it was all dug up, the government was like, "Oh no, it wasn't us. It wasn't us. It was a bat. It was this bat that has this virus that you guys got this virus. It has nothing to do with us." So who at these really high levels of government knew that what they did was wrong, and then when it came out chose to suppress the truth because the optics would look really bad, because it sets a precedent. If they did it in Guam, where else did they do it? What about like the Native American reservations? What about the mass sterilization of Native American women? And what about the massive amounts of cancer and disease that have permeated certain areas, certain neighborhoods that border military bases or former military testing sites? Then they'd have to pay out for those as well. So they don't want to set the precedent that they don't care. They want to try to obfuscate.
You said Constitution. But there are two ways to look at the Constitution, right? And this has always been the way. There are those that think that the Constitution should be followed exactly. And then there is those that think that the Constitution should be by what the intent was and leave it a lot of flexibility and gray. There's a lot of people that are constitutional absolutists and a lot of people that think Constitution and what the meaning of the Constitution is should adapt with the times. I am more of a constitutional absolutist, but I understand that if, depending on your worldview, you could think that there has to be some adjustability. It's just a different way to look at things, you know? And I don't know. I feel like my way is better, but don't we all? But don't we have to at least try to understand the other side? Because I understand.
Well, I do. I do. Hold on a sec, because I think this is important. For example, in the United States, the Constitution can be seen as an obstruction to getting things done, because the government was meant to move slowly, because the founders didn't want laws to just be passed like this, and then all of a sudden we've backed ourselves into a corner and all of our freedoms are gone, right? But if you look at places like Russia or China, right, and you see the way that authoritarian executive power is wielded by people once they get a hold of it, then you go, oh, so while they can get a lot done, that also means that they can wipe their own citizenry off the face of the earth and nobody will blink an eye. I think, ultimate heart of the Constitution is that we are given at our birth a free spirit, a free thinking mind. And based on that free spirit and free thinking mind, we have creative impulses. And when the government tries to get involved and tries to mold the minds to be workers in factories, or mold the minds to be consumers of trash so that they can make money, then these creative capabilities, these creative impulses end up being stifled. And the ruling class ends up becoming totalitarian dictators. And that, I think, is what the founders were dealing with. So they tried to create a system where that couldn't happen.
I mean, it makes sense to me, but I feel like you're really convincing. You're a really convincing guy. And I think that's part of it, right? That you are so convincing and you're able to kind of expand on these topics in a very quick way. And they don't like that. If there is someone that is able to articulate kind of the extreme of what they're going up against, of course they don't like that. Do you think they targeted you early on? Because when did you start having these beliefs? Was it before or after? And when did you start?
Dude, I had a YouTube. I was doing YouTube videos. I just put up on my Rumble account a YouTube video called "Just Take the Red Pill" that I did in like I think late 2018 or mid 2018, something like that. And I was doing videos even before that, way back in like 2012, that I just didn't put on the internet because I thought they were garbage. But the message was still there. I watched them recently. I was like, that was actually pretty
On
darn
point.
good. Yeah. So, dude, I'll tell you this right now. I have been a TI for some time. You know what a TI
What's
is?
a TI?
Targeted individual. Now, what's interesting about it, though, is that I'm still alive. So that reinforced some beliefs in me that there are good people in what we call the deep state, that there are good people in the government that looked at me, looked at my profile, looked at my dossier, as whatever you want to call it, and was like, this guy's not a threat. He's a tremendous pain in the ass, but he's not a threat. And we're not going to kill him.
But doesn't that
just don't let his message get out there?
But doesn't that put you in the line of a controlled opposition then? If they know and they let you go, isn't that exactly what that is?
No. Controlled opposition is, in my opinion, somebody like Nick Fuentes. So Nick Fuentes says all these things that a lot of people like to hear about the border, about, Christianity and the sovereignty of our country and yada, yada, yada. But then he also goes and says crazy stuff like he thinks Hitler's cool and awesome, or like he said he wants a 16-year-old bride when he's 30, or that he thinks women should be burnt at the stake for practicing witchcraft and breaking the law, or that he likes China's law enforcement policies. I mean, Nick Fuentes was also, I don't know if you know, Nick Fuentes is on camera encouraging his followers, his groypers, to move past the barricades, ignore the police, and go into the Capitol building. Has he since really done anything for anybody that was arrested for J6 that went into the building on his behalf? Has he been arrested himself? All he did was testify before the J6 committee. What, in my opinion, controlled opposition is somebody that comes into the camp and claims to be on your side and then creates this narrative that demonizes a whole group of people. He claims he's America first. So now the Mockingbird media has a reason to point at people like Nick Fuentes and see America first people are racist. They're white supremacists. People like him like Hitler. They don't like Jews. Do you see? So that, in my opinion, is evidence of controlled opposition. What I'm doing is I'm creating clarity. What I'm doing is I'm explaining how these things, how like psychological warfare works, how it is that the deep state works, what the deep state is. I'm actually even running for Congress so that I can bring clarity and bring a change in DC.
Like a Vivek Ramaswamy?
No, not like Vivek Ramaswamy.
Is he controlled opposition? Do you think he's in with the deep state?
This is what made me come to the conclusion about Vivek. Number one, I looked into him. CEO of a biopharmaceutical company. Are those the good guys? Not in my experience. Pro masks in 2020. Wants to get us back involved with the TPP in China and the Chinese trade. He also claimed that he knew what the deep state was. His explanation on the Sean Ryan show was complex, and it was very lacking in any sort of concrete evidence or any sort of like uh, fully formed ideas that were easy to explain to others. He also said things like he wants to defund the FBI, which, you know, conservatives are like, yeah, let's do that. And then he said, and we're going to keep around agencies that aren't corrupt, like the DEA. Hold on a second. So you're telling me you think the FBI is corrupt and you want to dismantle them, but you think that the DEA is all right? Like, and I know that there's good DEA agents. I know people that have either had them in their family or whatever. There's good people. But how is all this fentanyl getting across the border, man? If the DEA is doing their job, how has it happened? I knew people in prison that said that they were like working with DEA agents or their parents were when they were drug dealers. So like this idea that Vivek Ramaswamy somehow has a plan. Does he really look like a guy with a plan?
I mean, he feels like he has he seems like a guy with a plan. It's just not a plan for America. It seems like more of a personal plan. That's what it seems like to me. I don't know.
I agree. Well, and then finally, what was the capstone on all this pile of BS was the way that he was like quoting Obama in his speeches and in his talking points at the debate. It's like, dude, you have to know that the internet is going to pick you apart.
And
why?
And when they do these things, when they do these things and they kind of do it in your face in like this mocking way, anytime I see that, I'm like, you know, like you don't do that by mistake. It was intentional. He's either the biggest nerd ever and he thought that would be funny and the joke just missed, or it was a mocking way of doing it and telling you what they're going to do, that I am exactly who you guys think I am, which is a reincarnation of Obama.
Well, and it's NLP. It worked with Obama. You see, so he thought it, you know, in my opinion, I think he thought it would work for him. I don't trust him at all. Look, it's like the old saying goes, oh, the people want a hero, we will give them one.
I feel like if they're going to do a hero, they'd do someone better than that though. But he speaks well. I'll give him that.
Oh, dude, I will say that he is an amazing orator and he does a great job of hitting the talking points. But hold on a second. This is really, really important.
And he does a lot of this.
The intelligence agencies are listening to everything we say on Twitter Spaces, online, in the chats, on Telegram, on Facebook, you name it. So they're listening to everything that we say and they're knowing these are the things that people want to hear. Here you go, say this, and they're going to lose their minds. They're going to be like, yeah, that's our guy right there.
Can I get that report somewhere? If you can send it to me, I'd love to read it too, you know?
Dude, AI, bro. AI.
Yeah.
Like AI can do it like that.
All right, well, let's go one more question real quick. Thank you, Jake, for your sacrifice from Jarmog. What is your opinion on the fact that there have been no MAGA rallies since J6? Will you attend another rally in DC?
I'm not really permitted. My PO would rather me not attend political rallies. I don't ever want to step foot back in DC again unless I'm elected or invited.
Do you feel like, what if you just went as jeans, a t-shirt, a hat, very just to go? Would they? You think they're still tracking you and watching you?
I don't wear hats, so no, I'm good. I don't. Like I said, dude, DC's spiritual atmosphere is about as dense as it gets. It's like Hollywood. It is so mucky. It's like stepping into a sewer. It's like you're sticky. There's like grime and grease and muck all around you in the ether. It's not a nice place to be. It's very, very spiritually dense and low vibe. I'm not going to go back unless I am an elected official or unless I'm invited by an elected official.
Can you feel the energy when you walk in? Like, how thick does it feel to you?
Oh, you can cut it with a knife, bro. It's like it's a dense fog of
I got another one. From Phelps. Phelps is one of the moderators. He's been super excited to have you on. Jacob, you admitted guilt. Do you like Jacob or Jake? In the beginning, everyone said Jacob Chansley, Jacob Chansley, Jacob Chansley. But then on your Twitter, it says Jake Chansley.
Yeah, it says Jake Angeli Chansley, actually. I prefer Jake Angeli. And this is, once again, it's NLP. How many times is it being repeated? Critical factor bypass. Jacob Angeli, Jacob Chansley, Jacob Chansley, Jacob Chansley, Jacob Chansley. And then everybody's like, this is Jacob Chansley.
Yeah. Jake. Jake, you admitted guilt at the start, but now you're backtracking it. Is that right?
Well, no. What it was that the way that these types of things are supposed to be done is the government is supposed to find evidence of a crime, do an investigation, make an arrest, file charges. And then once those charges are filed, they have to give the defense attorney all of the evidence that they have and found in their investigation, both positive and negative, exculpatory and incriminating, right? What they did in my case, and in many January 6 cases, they made an arrest, they filed charges, they did an investigation. So the footage that appeared on Tucker Carlson, right, was not in my original discovery.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Now, oh, dude, it's absolutely insane. And there was CCTV footage in my original discovery, as far as my memory serves me. So this is what I find hard to believe. And this is part of the reason why we chose to file the motion to vacate my sentence and my conviction. And that was based on a 2255 ineffective assistance of counsel. And that is this. I told the FBI that the police escorted me around the building, that I was trying to help clear the building, that I was trying to help stop violence, theft, vandalism, etc. It is the FBI's job to comb over all of that footage inside and outside the Capitol. Okay? Are you telling me, I mean, I'm not Waldo. This isn't hard. I'm not hard to spot. You know what I'm saying? Are you telling me that the FBI, the government, the prosecution, and the January 6th committee combed over all of that footage using me as their poster boy and didn't find the footage of the police escorting me around the building, chose not to put it in my discovery, or just somehow missed it? Now, this is what's crazy. And this is part of the reason why we filed the motion, is that the prosecution said that they made that footage that was on Tucker available to my defense attorney at the time, Albert Watkins, by sending him the same link that they sent all of the defense attorneys to a website where they could access all 44,000 hours of footage. So they didn't create a full package of all of the evidence that they had when they handed my discovery over to my previous attorney. What they did is they handed him all the damning stuff. And it is entirely possible that either through government stupidity, negligence, or prosecutorial misconduct, they chose not to admit that evidence because they knew that if and when it was submitted to the court and went public, the whole thing would be turned on its head because they used my image to create this shock and awe campaign of violence and chaos.
But they can't blame like we tried, but it didn't work out. There's so many technologies where look for this guy with the horns, with his shirt off, and they have
facial recognition software on the Capitol CCTV footage.
This technology exists. It would have taken them an afternoon to get all the footage of you in the thing. All the footage of you before and after. I don't understand why. Like, they don't have it. How's that a thing? And how can they use that as an excuse?
Well, and how many other people have had exculpatory evidence lost as a needle in the haystack when the government handed these defense attorneys 44,000 hours of footage and said, find your client, find the exculpatory evidence? How many hours, man hours, were poured into by each individual attorney and their staff to look over that footage, to try to find their client and try to find exculpatory evidence from start to finish? How many hours and how much money was charged to those J6ers? You see? And this is part of the reason why I wanted to file the motion. Because it's like, no, the government did not do what it was supposed to do.
But a lot of people have used, in description of you, including the media, they've used a lot of isms. And then we have trials and cases of guys like Nick Sandman and who's a kid in Minneapolis? The guy in Minneapolis, the one that shot the person, and they called him a racist, and they said it was a white crime.
You're no. You're talking about Rittenhouse, and it wasn't in
Rittenhouse.
Minneapolis. It was in Wisconsin.
Yes, Rittenhouse. And they were able to file suit against people that defamed them. Do you have a case? Is that something you're looking at? Is that a possibility, or is that not allowed?
Well, the Globe, I think, is what it's called. You know, I certainly probably have a case against them because they said neo-Nazis were planning to, just like assassinate people in the government or something. They had my face on the cover. The thing is about defamation cases in the media is that because the government and the media are like this, and because the government and the media are working together to profile certain civilians in certain ways so that they can weaponize the media, they made the laws really, really loose for the media regarding people. In particular, they made the laws to where it was difficult for individuals to sue the media over defamation. You have to prove malicious intent, and that's very difficult to do. Now, in the case of people like Kyle Rittenhouse, or even in my own case, I have yet to find a defamation lawyer that is, because I haven't really looked. I've been told that it's difficult to win these kinds of cases, but and I don't like litigation. I don't like courtrooms. I don't like lawyers.
But Rittenhouse and Nick Sandman, I think is his name, they made like ridiculous money, right? They made like fuck you money, right? I think they did what, 100, 200, 300 million dollars. Not an attorney has reached out like, we'll do it for free. We just want 30%. That's a big payout for them too.
Hey, if you know a good defense attorney that's willing to take the case, you let me know. Or a good contract. I mean, a good defamation lawyer, not defense attorney. A good defamation lawyer. You let me know. I'll say this though. It doesn't matter to me to make $1. What matters to me is to make a difference. Now, if I can make a difference by suing the Mockingbird media for their defamation and they're saying white supremacist, white supremacist, white supremacist, while my face is on the screen with no evidence that I'm a white supremacist at all, then hell yeah. You let me know. If there's any lawyers in the house that want to raise their hand, feel free. Let me know. Contact me on Twitter. But
because if you were to
I'm
get
more concerned about making a difference. I want to make a difference, not $1.
But if you were vindicated in the media and they had to settle with you, if they did, I don't know if you have a case or not. I'm not an attorney, but if they did and they had to settle with you, wouldn't that make a difference? Because that would be shattering their biggest narrative about January 6th.
Yeah, and maybe that's why some lawyers haven't reached out, because they don't want to touch the hot potato. I really don't know. The way I look at it is that what could best be done is to get on these Mockingbird media outlets and prove them wrong.
And you've been trying, it looks like, to get on more and more of these interviews, but they seem to be cutting you up, editing you a little bit.
Well, yeah,
but they do that to everybody, right?
5 minutes or so at the most.
Yeah,
the left-leaning ones.
Yeah, I tried to. When I first started doing this content, I'd get asked to do like these news shows, or can you come on the podcast, or these news type podcasts, and can you do 5 minutes? And I did it one time, and I was like, I don't like this. I have one talking point, and I just have to splurt it out there, and I don't know. I enjoy this better. I feel like we're kind of going everywhere. There's no structure, but I feel like if you and I were at dinner together, this is what we were doing. Quick question, one more. Let me get one more in before we kind of go in. Let me see. Ray Epps. we've heard ever since January 6th, we've heard so much Ray Epps talk. Ray Epps, Ray Epps, Ray Epps, Ray Epps. He's an FBI, he's a plan, he was a part of it. Do you have an opinion on him?
Yeah. So, and it factors into some of the false things that have been said about me. There's a lot of people in particular within the Q community, or the Anon community rather, that think that I'm a Fed or that I'm some sort of a crisis actor. I mean, if the Mockingbird media saying I'm a failed actor, they don't know what they're talking about. They're idiots. They have no idea what they're talking about. They did not do their homework. It's a talking point that these Q people who claim to hate the media, you know, these Anons that claim to hate the media, they go with it. It's just like, you got to be kidding.
Isn't that funny how it works? That you say the media's lying, media's lying, media's lying, and then you hear something you want to hear, and you're like, oh, but this time they're telling the truth.
Yeah. Oh, I know, dude. Oh, I know. So, if you want to see what I think, in my opinion, what evidence of being treated with federal kid gloves looks like, then look at Ray Epps. The man is, besides Nick Fuentes, the only person that is on camera telling people to go into the Capitol. The media, the FBI put him on the most wanted list. They took him off. The media went to bat for him. Literally went to bat for him. Look what the media did to me. Okay? They went to bat for this guy. Then, only after so much public outrage, did Ray Epps get a misdemeanor. Now, hold on. Now, this is really important. Are you familiar with the name Brandon Straka?
No.
He was the founder of the Walk Away movement. He was a Democrat, and he started the Walk Away movement, walking away from the Democrat Party. He was supposed to be speaking at January 6th at that demonstration. And then when stuff went sideways, from what I understand, he walked onto the premises just outside the building, right? He had his camera out and he's like filming all this stuff, seeing what the hell is going on here, you know? And then walked around a little bit, walked away. And this is the story as far as I know it. The FBI had him arrested a very short time later. And they arrested him, and then they already started talking with his lawyers about a plea deal. They were going to slap him with a couple of misdemeanors, but they said if he doesn't plead guilty to these misdemeanors, we're going to throw the felony charge of 1512 obstruction of an official proceeding. So he better plead guilty to this, otherwise we're going to slap felonies on him. Why isn't Ray Epps getting that kind of treatment? Why isn't Ray Epps getting charged with something like seditious conspiracy, considering that he was one of the only people besides Nick Fuentes, encouraging people to go into the Capitol the night before, for God's sake? And I've also heard that he, and I don't know if this is true, I haven't done my homework, but I also heard that he testified in open court in Oath Keeper trials for Oath Keepers here in Arizona. So if that's true, then these feds, a lot of the time they use people as assets, confidential informants for long periods of time because they're reliable. And so, you know, dude, when it comes right down to it, the fact of the matter is I don't know. But all of the evidence seems to me to indicate as such.
I mean, what do you think is more likely? That they got to him, and they planted him, they had him early involved in the beginning, or that after everything went down, they claimed him an asset to use him after? What do you think is more likely situation? Because I've heard both sides.
Well, considering if what is being said about him testifying in open court against Oath Keepers in Arizona for the feds is true, then it's more likely the former, not the latter.
So you're running for Congress, and you are running as a libertarian in a area where there was a Republican congresswoman already, and she's not going to run again. Why not just run as a Republican?
Because the Republicans, I think they can be judged by their leadership. People like Mitch McConnell, people like Kevin McCarthy, people like Paul Ryan, front runner and presidential candidate for a while there, Mitt Romney, John McCain, Henry, what is his name? Adam Kinzinger, Cheney, Liz Cheney, George W. Bush. These are all good reasons why. There are some good Republicans out there, don't get me wrong. But I think that they fumbled the ball on purpose. You know, Ronna McDaniel, the moment that she took over, dude, like,
Yeah.
It's like they're losing on purpose. And if you understand infiltration instead of invasion, and you understand the way that you bring a country down from within by controlling your opposition, then it would make sense why it is that the only opposing party in the United States against a communist regime would have controlled opposition to take it down from within. I mean, does Mitch McConnell or Adam Kinzinger or Mitt Romney or Paul Ryan, do these people, do they exude leadership? Do they seem like strong men to you?
I mean, I understand your point, and I get it. The Republican Party is just as broken, if not more broken, than the Democratic Party. Because as corrupt as the Democratic Party is, they're rather unified. As a party, they're effective. The Republican Party, although I lean heavily much more conservative in my ideologies and my views, the party is split in two. They lack leadership. It feels like a good 75% are just waiting for Trump to show up and take charge again. And there's no one wants to take leadership until he shows up, which is I feel like if one of them was able to take leadership, they'd have a very good position to help out in the Trump administration if he were to win. I think it's short-sighted, but they're scared because they tie their name to him too early. And what if things go south? Then their careers may be over. So a lot of cowards on the Republican Party. I agree with that. But if the goal is to change and make effect change, don't you have to pick a side? Because the Libertarian Party, as much as I feel like I am more with the libertarian movement, and I understand that less government can't control my life, leave me alone, right? I understand a lot of that. But if you want to make a change, don't you have to go to one of the left or the right? And obviously for you, the right?
No. No, I don't think so. I think that most of America are centrists. Most of America are people that just want to be left alone. Very few people in America want to be told what to do, especially by government.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the people that want to be told what to do, well, go ahead, get in line, dude. Let me know how that works out for you. The way I look at it is that the only way forward is center. That both Republican and Democrats have gone to such extremes that I just can't follow. You know, there's no more JFK Democrats anymore. You know, there's no more Reagan Republicans. And the thing is about Reagan, he had his fair share of scandals. There, you know, so in my opinion, Donald Trump is the closest thing to a person for president that I would vote for. But even Donald Trump, there's things that he did and said that I don't agree with. I agree with most of what he said and did. And a lot of the things that he did say and do, I would say and do as president. But there's other things where it's just like, come on, why'd you do that? You know, like but the one thing I really like about him is that he's himself. He's not putting on a facade. He's not putting, on a face for people. You know, he is boldly himself. And that is more than I can say for 99% of DC.
I think that's my favorite thing about Donald Trump is that when he tweeted at 2 a.m., if it made total sense or it was just way out there, I knew in my heart it was him. I knew it was at least I get a peek of what the president is thinking at that moment. I don't have to agree, but at least I know it's his thoughts. When I see a Joe Biden tweet, I don't ever think, oh, I can't believe this is what Joe Biden's thinking about. You know what? No one in the world thinks, I'm so glad I see, like nobody thinks that. We all understand that it's a White House intern that's probably 23 years old, fresh out of college, and somebody sent her a note and she put it together in the most political way she can because she has no context of how the world actually works. And
Yes.
I appreciated that when Donald Trump spoke, I can know that at least it's him. And in a world where everything is a psyop, where everything is media manipulation, there was something just so refreshing about that. And as crazy as it sounds, for me, that's like good enough. You know?
Amen, dude. I hear you because it's genuine, and I think that things like reality TV are perfect examples of how people have become so disillusioned with how fake everything is. It's like we're eating fake food. We're watching fake propaganda. We're in fake religions. I mean, just look at the Catholic Church and the Pope. We're dealing with fake politicians. We're dealing with fake schools. And it's slowly poisoning our souls. We want something real. And that's part of why I'm running for Congress. Because, dude, and like I said in the Newsmax interview, they're like, well, doesn't going without a shirt and wearing horns and face paint like ruin your credibility? And I was like, well, no, I don't think so, because I'm showing you exactly who I am. This is me, bare-chested, full regalia, face paint and horns. This is who I am. This is what I stand for. And guess what? Yeah, I want to represent you in the Congress, because guess what? I'm the only person that has the balls to do it in District 8.
I think that's cool. You know, I think going out there and running for Congress and trying to make a difference, it's a good thing. But I feel like, all right, let me just run this one by you then. I feel like a lot of people who join politics, not everyone's joining because they think, oh, I'm going to become corrupt. I'm going to take over control. I don't feel like a lot of people join with the worst of intentions. No one thinks, oh yeah, I'm going to work 30 years, my ass off, and then 30 years, I'm going to be like Nancy Pelosi, and I'm going to be corrupt, and I'm going to be rich. It's a long time to commit to that. It's a long time to get elected and reelected and reelected and reelected again in order to survive it. I feel like a lot of people join for the right reasons. It's just that when you get there, the swamp and the deep state, it's so thick and so strong that even when you show up with the best of intention, you get corrupted.
I understand what you're saying. I would take exception to some of the things you're saying, though. You know who Dennis Hastert is?
No, go ahead.
He was the Speaker of the House during the W. Bush years. And the FBI knew that he had child porn on his laptop. They also knew that he was trading and trafficking in illegal drugs and illegal guns in Turkey. And when Sibel Edmonds, the special agent that was in charge of investigating Dennis Hastert, brought this information to her superiors and said, my investigation's over, here's the dossier, this guy is corrupt as hell. They took the dossier and said, thank you, drop the investigation, forget about it. And I asked myself, well, why would they do that? And the only thing I can think of, and by the way, Dennis Hastert later on there was charges pressed against him because he was raping children when he was a wrestling coach in high school. So he's clearly, he was groomed for it. And the reason why they chose him, in spite of the fact that they knew all this stuff about him, is because they wanted to get things like the Patriot Act through. Remember what I said about corrupting key portions of checks and balances within the government. Then you don't have to corrupt the whole thing. You just corrupt these key portions, and then you circumvent the checks and balances, centralizing power, stabilizing the corrupt apparatus, etc. So then there's also people like, the Barney Frank scandal. Are you familiar with the Barney Frank scandal? He's a congressman in the House of Representatives. I think he was out in New York. It turns out his gay lover was like trafficking human beings. I even think children in a flat in New York. He knew all about it. And I think I remember seeing a video of him on C-SPAN saying that if the House didn't drop their investigation of him, then he was going to oust everybody in the House that was in on it with him. And lo and behold, the investigation was just gone. Okay, so that's a Democrat. There's a Republican. Then there's the most recent scandal. The DOJ just arrested some people that were trafficking Asian people Asian women, if I'm not mistaken, and they were trafficking them to military officials and politicians and policemen and entertainers and all sorts of people. So, you know, I'm not buying it. I could go on and on. I don't know. Have you heard of the Franklin cover up?
Mm-mm.
John DeCamp's book. He was a former, I believe, he's a senator, and he wrote a book about the a man named Lawrence King that was a rising Republican star in the 80s that was found trafficking children from CPS in Nebraska, forcing them into satanic rituals, beating them, having sex with them, raping them, forcing them to witness and participate in animal sacrifice and all sorts of stuff, doing drugs. And the dude only did 2 years in prison. Then there's also obviously the whole thing with Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton, all the people that flew to Epstein Island. Then there's like the scandals in Hollywood, the pedophiles that are in Hollywood, what Corey Feldman was talking about, I mean, dude, the list, I mean, look at Harvey Weinstein. How long was he in Hollywood for? How long was he doing what he was doing? Was he the only one? Oh, no. You'd better believe that he's not the only one. That's the way that things work over there. That's why Hollywood is just as dense as DC, because they're both doing this pedophilia black magic BS. That's how they keep their power maintained. That's who's in charge. So I understand where you're coming from, but I want you to try to fathom and grasp the notion that yes, there are people that come into DC bright-eyed and bushy-tailed thinking that they're going to change the world. And then they find out how things really work. And then when they really start rocking the boat, they, lo and behold, somebody asks them, do you remember what happened to JFK? You see? And then so if they could shoot a sitting president in broad daylight on live television and then brush it under the rug, you think that you're going to rock the boat? Okay? So that I think happens to some. Absolutely. No doubt. Those people usually don't last in politics very long. But there are nefarious actors that are a part of these rings or are groomed for these positions because of the material that is had on them or the material that is gotten on them later after they've risen to certain levels of wealth and power. Final point. Are you familiar with the story and the testimony of Ronald Bernard, the Dutch international banker?
Mm-mm.
Ronald Bernard is a Dutch international banker that was a part of these satanic, banking cartels. He was invited to these rituals and stuff. And, he thought that it was all just, for show, fun and games, no big deal. And then he was invited to a ritual where they put a knife in his hand and they put an infant on the altar. And they told him to sacrifice the infant, and he couldn't do it. He walked away. He blew the whistle. He started doing interviews. And if I'm not mistaken, he's dead.
And that convenient.
So, yeah, interesting. So this idea of, pedophilia, child sacrifice, and stuff like that. If you look into like things like what was happening with Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino on the military bases, he's he was a lieutenant colonel in the Army in charge of psychological warfare and mind control. He was also an admitted Satanist and founder of the Temple of Set, which Set is the ancient Egyptian version of Satan. And he was in a scandal on I believe it was a military base in California, where over 80 children were supposedly raped in satanic ritual abuse. Many of them had contracted venereal diseases. Many of them had evidence of severe penetration, bleeding, rectal bleeding, stuff like that. And the investigation was just gone. Nothing came out of it. So, you put all this stuff together. You put in the testimony of people like Gary Webb, the guy that was out of San Jose that was talking about the CIA trafficking drugs into the country during the crack explosion, or the fact that heroin was being brought in from Vietnam during the war in the coffins and bodies of Army soldiers. Or, you talk about, the fentanyl coming across the border. And so it's like there's a pattern here. And I don't trust people. I don't trust institutions. I trust patterns.
But if you're going to get elected, do you really want to get elected? Are you really trying to go? Or is this kind of,
Absolutely.
I want to, but like not really want to go? Like how?
Well, I'll put it this way, dude. I wish I didn't have to run.
Yeah.
It's like Washington. He didn't want to be president.
Yeah.
He just wanted to hang out on his farm and grow hemp. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Because if
that's
you
what
remember,
Washington
like
wanted.
MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she had a lot of very similar ideas leading up into her election. And leading up into her first election, they said, oh, she believes in QAnon and she's out there, and they paint her up as crazy. And she had to go out and almost denounce some of the beliefs that you would probably think she still believes. But in order to get elected, in order to kind of get through the system, she had to almost disavow some of the beliefs that she had. Is that something you're ready to do if that came to it?
Everything that I believe is based on proof.
I get it, and we all think that too. But
here's the thing, dude.
it's a game. Politics is a game.
Bro, I don't back down for anybody. I don't cower to a mob. No, dude. I'm going to stand up. And even if you're a minority of one, the truth is the truth. That's Gandhi. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. That's Gandhi. Okay? I am doing everything that I can to create and be the change I wish to see. And you're not going to create the change that you wish to see if you're not willing to be the change that you wish to be, and be courageous in your convictions. Because I challenge the Mockingbird media. Look up the things that I talk about. You, sir, look into these things. Look into the testimony of Ron Bernard. Look into the Franklin cover-up. Look into the Barney Frank scandal. Look into the testimony of Sibel Edmonds, the ex-FBI agent that was looking into Dennis Hastert. She has a blog called boilingfrogpost.com. You can also look into the Michael Aquino scandal. Look into Bohemian Grove. Look into the people that went there: Reagan, Nixon, Kissinger, Ford, all sorts of people. Look into the people in Hollywood. Look into the testimony against the people like Weinstein. Look into what Corey Feldman is saying. You know, and looking at, like, what's her name? Bella Thorne, and her talking about getting raped, as a Disney child. Look at what happened to Amanda Bynes. I mean, for God's sake, look at poor Britney Spears. You know, I mean, how many of these people, how many of these Disney kids, how many of these children, how many of these politicians, how many is it going to take? How many of these bankers? How many people is it going to take to come forward before people realize what the F is going on behind the scenes? And if it takes a dude in horns and face paint running for Congress that has the balls to say what everybody's afraid to say, like what you're saying, then I'll do it. If I'm the only one, okay, let's go. Let's do a debate, bro. But, you know what I'm saying? Not you. I'm saying to the,
no, I get it.
Let's do a debate.
But can you win by being that guy and being that aggressive? Do you feel like, because you're running for Congress and you have a very small district that you go, how many people is the constituency over there where you're
It's like
going?
800,000.
So for 800,000 people, you probably need what, 90,000, 100,000 votes? Something like that. Do you think you can get there?
Absolutely.
Don't you feel like you get there if you want to keep your ideas, keep what it is, and you just put an R next to your name? Wouldn't you automatically get the R votes that don't care either way? They're just going to vote for the R. And then you only have to convince like a smaller people. But if you run as a libertarian, you have to convince a lot of people. You're almost giving up the free R votes that you would get.
I'm up to the challenge. I challenge any Republican running in my district to a debate. Let's see what the voters think.
Do you think they'll debate you? Or they'll say, we don't want to be associated with this guy, and they'll probably use that excuse because you got to think the other guys aren't going to be as prepared as you are. They're not. You're going to crush them. So they're going to use the horns as an excuse. Like, we don't want to be associated with that. We don't want to be on the same stage as that. Wouldn't that make it difficult?
This is the way I look at it. If they had any courage at all, then they
don't have courage.
I want to be the guy. I want to be the guy that proves him wrong. I want to be the guy that proves he doesn't belong in politics.
They don't have the courage.
These people are cowards. Anybody that's in politics that doesn't want to debate me is a coward.
They don't want to. They want to go the easiest road possible. right? You don't go
Path
the
of least
hardest one.
resistance always leads to hell.
I
for the
get
most
it,
part.
but they're literally trying to get to hell.
You said it, not me.
We got a couple of questions in the chat I want to bring up. Andrew Tate.
Cool.
Andrew Tate he has a similar story. Maybe not in the belief, and I don't know where you stand on him, but the story is the same, where the media piled on him and tried to paint him a different way. Do you lean one way or the other?
Look, I have a lot of sympathy for being maligned by a corrupt system. I think it's rather telling of the laws of karma that he would make millions of dollars by using cam girls. Some people might say exploiting women, and in many ways fooling and in some cases even defrauding men online and making large sums of money by lying to them through these cam girls. And then to go online and brag about it and think that there will be no consequence. God sees all. That's why I don't care about money. That's why I care about making a difference. Because, dude, you could have millions of dollars and have no soul. And I'm not saying that Andrew Tate has no soul. What I'm saying is that the karma that comes with doing something like that is nothing I have any interest in. He can keep his millions of dollars. I'll keep my dignity, because I would never do that to women or do that to desperate men that are looking for love and affection.
But isn't there something to say about being unapologetically you? If you're gonna use women, but you admit it and you tell about it and you say I have cam girls, at least there's something honest about that versus the rest of the people who are doing it but will never admit it. If we have to draw a line, can we accept a little bit of, for lack of a word, sin? Knowing that the line is a tough line. And if we are between truth and non-truth, I kind of respect the truth side of it. You know what I mean?
Well, so do I. And I think it took balls to say what he said, but I also think it took cowardice to do what he did. You know what I'm saying? And there's things that he says that I agree with, you know?
Of course.
But at the same time, I look at that and I go, dude, well, I hope you learned your lesson. You know, I am a forgiving man. I Gandhi once said that I want to change their minds. He was talking about the British. He said, I want to change their minds, not punish them for weaknesses that we all possess. You know, he said, and if we're going to change things, then there's better ways of doing it than derailing trains or slashing someone with a sword. I've found that we're all such sinners that we should leave punishment to God. Right? And I think that if God has graced me with love and forgiveness, because I've made mistakes, and yeah, I'll admit, if I'm wrong, I'll say, yeah, I was wrong. Sorry about that. And I think Andrew Tate has, at least at some point, done something to that effect.
Yeah, aren't people?
But he was kind of grandiose about some of the things that he was saying about it.
I mean, one would say that
prison can be very humbling.
One would say that showing up at the Capitol wearing horns and a shirt is very grandiose.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But people have the ability to change and
definitely
grow.
Don't let me get away with that.
You know, so I think people have the ability to change and learn. I think,
but hold on a second, though. Because my reasons for doing so are rather complex, and I had all the right intentions. Now, you know, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. I get that. But I had all the right good intentions, and I wasn't trying to hurt anybody. I wasn't trying to overthrow the government or threaten democracy. You know, I didn't knowingly for months at a time defraud several men of hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars by exploiting vulnerable girls who were showing their butthole on the internet. Okay. That takes a certain type of mental conviction. What I did took a matter of 30 minutes. What he did took months, weeks, maybe even years
But
to get to that.
who are we to judge timelines? Because it's all
Well, I'm not
perspective. It's
judging.
all
I'm
not
just saying that
judging,
there's a
but you know what I
drastic
mean.
contrast between the two of the things. That's
And
all I'm
one would say that one is we are judging one, or there is a contrast. The other would say it looks the same. It's all perspective, right?
saying.
I
Amen
think
to
there's a
that. Yeah.
perspective to it. I think it's interesting. I think it's always interesting looking at other people and their transgressions or whatever struggles they went through, because I think it depends on how you come out the other side.
Amen.
And
Every sinner has a past. Every saint has a past. Every sinner has a future, and that's why I don't. If Andrew Tate were to want to talk to me and shake my hand, I wouldn't be like, no, get away from me. I'm not that kind of guy.
yeah.
I'd shake his hand. I'd say hi. You know what I mean? I'd hear his side of the story. If he had reformed his life, then cool. And and once again, I actually have a lot of sympathy for what him and his brother went through, because he refused to join the club.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've listened to his interviews, and like I said, there's a lot of things that he says that I agree with. There's just some things where it's just like,
It's hard to get over.
And like I said, I don't judge him for it. I just look at it like, well, I would never do that.
But if you are trying to build a movement, if you're trying to make a difference, then whatever past they've had, don't we just have to start accepting more people?
Well, yeah, but
As long as the goal is the same.
Accepted everybody. Christ said, I have not come into this world to call the righteous to repentance, but the sinners, and they may enter the kingdom of God even before you. So I do everything I can to walk in the footsteps of Christ. I consider myself a disciple of Christ. Okay. And I am willing to help people get on the spiritual path. No problem. Now, I really don't like pedophiles. Okay. So I have a rough time with that one. I'm not, and in no way, shape, or form am I saying that Andrew Tate's a pedophile. Don't get the wrong idea. What I'm saying is that when it comes down to like judgment calls of people's character, of like being accepting of people, no, not accepting pedophiles. Sorry. No, not doing that one. You can go over there and live on an island somewhere, staying away from children. Then that, I think, is mercy.
But don't you have to, I mean, I think about this, right? Because there are people that I just don't agree with a lot of what they say, but they are avidly against kind of the government controls that we're fighting against. And that's such a big battle. As long as you agree with that, I feel like a part of me says you just have to accept everyone with their flaws, because you are going after probably the biggest battle in the world. And if you are, can you choose your friends?
Well, you better.
But if if you're trying to win,
dude, a friend that lies to you is more dangerous than an enemy that tells you the truth.
But if you're trying to win, you need numbers, you need people, you need influence.
No, dude, no, you need truth. That's what does it. And look, I understand where you're coming from. Don't get the wrong idea. You definitely need help. And if Andrew Tate wanted to collaborate and talk and debate or something, hey, absolutely. You know what I'm saying? I'm not judging him.
Of course. And I'm not talking about him in general. I'm talking about more the idea that we need to throw a bigger and wider net. Because if there is one truth that they're fighting, then you have to accept some of the other flaws and a lot of the other things that you may not morally agree with. Because again, going after a really big enemy.
Well, you know what's funny? You're right to a certain extent. It is a soulless machine that has taken over the planet.
Because integrity doesn't win wars.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but good karma does. And having God on your side, it makes all the difference. Trust me on that. And while I understand where you're coming from, the truth enables peasants to be more powerful than kings. It's able to topple corrupt empires and free whole nations from slavery. That's why freedom of speech, coming back to what we were talking about, that's why freedom of speech is such a threat to the global cabal, because of the fact that the truth will set you free, that the truth can disarm all of their lies like that. It's a house of cards. You just poke your finger in it, just the whole thing comes tumbling down. That's why anybody that even gets their finger close to that house of cards is like, has their hand cut off, you know? So that's why I fearlessly tell the truth. And that's why, to a certain extent, I understand where you're coming from about being, you know, boldly telling the truth and standing behind whatever it is that you did and just saying, yeah, you know what? And that's why, you know, yeah, okay, I broke the law. Shouldn't have done that. Sorry. Don't judge one man by 30 minutes of his life.
No, I get that.
You know what I mean?
I feel like if the idea is that the number one threat to our way of life is control of the truth and control of people's words and freedom of speech, because I think that's the most important thing. They take that first, and then they go after your freedom of movement, and then it kind of spirals from there. So if the first and biggest and most important battle is freedom of free speech, don't you just have to join with anyone that's willing to fight that battle?
No. Because, and I understand what you're saying, if people want to join in the battle for free speech, cool. Do I have to join them or allow them to join me? No, they can fight their battle. They can, you know, do their thing for free speech. That's cool. But if you got a bunch of pedophiles that are walking around talking about how they should have the freedom of speech to, you know, to talk about screwing children, you know, to a certain extent, I'll put it this way. And this is kind of the approach I have with people like Nick Fuentes, because I think Nick Fuentes should not be censored.
Yeah.
I don't agree with most of the things that he said, but I think that censoring Nick Fuentes is a big mistake.
I agree.
Let him you know, get himself in trouble. Let him extinguish all his support on his own by opening his mouth.
I agree. I think that as long as it's not blatantly violent, what happened to you?
I have no idea.
I don't know. Why did I shrink you? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. As long as it's not blatantly violent, as long as you're not calling for action for something that could physically harm people, I think it should be allowed. I think racism, at least verbally, should be allowed. I don't think it's the government's role to come in and tell you have to think or feel that way. If you have your own personal bias, it's your own personal bias. It's not the government's role to point their government gun at you and tell you how you have to think about somebody. If you want to be racist, and I feel like it's tough because a white guy can't say that, which is crazy too. If a white guy said, I think we should all be allowed to be racist, they'd be like, I can't believe it, you're a racist. If I say that, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, well, modern racism. I mean, and you know, I think the illustration of talking about doing something like violence is a better illustration of the matter. And I will say that I understand where you're coming from. Without condoning or condemning, I understand. I just think that you don't have to ally yourselves with the people that are in a similar cause as you. I think that when you begin to open your camp up, you open it up to not just infiltration, but you will also open it up to things like fifth columns. You familiar with fifth columns? Okay. So I'm very wary about who I let in my circle. That's why I don't give out my phone number. That's why, you know, I'm very wary about who I share DMs with and stuff like that, because I know what the government will do. You know, they'll send somebody in and say some stuff, you know, either in their DMs or on a cell phone and be like, you were talking to this person. Conspiracy.
Conspiracy
you know?
Theorist.
No. The charge conspiracy.
Oh yeah.
Dude, that charge, that's what they're going after Trump on. That's what they got the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers on.
Yeah.
Dude, with conspiracy, you don't have to break the law. They can just get you for talking about or thinking about breaking the law. intending to break the law, which is very easy to prove in court based on the statutes, because all they need is two witnesses, just two witnesses that take the stand and say, yeah, he said this, he did that, that's the guy. Hence why they were trying to turn Enrique Tarrio against Trump. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, that's crazy too, isn't it? And
Yeah.
and I never understood that, because they said he was part of the Proud Boys, and the Proud Boys is a white supremacy group, and he doesn't look white at all.
Tell me about it.
And how can they run with that?
Where do they get that from?
And how did they get away with that for so long?
Their narrative and their reputation.
And if you're someone that believes it, but you've seen a picture, I get it. I remember when they had the mass shooter in Dallas, and it was like a Hispanic guy, and they said he was a Russian white supremacist neo-Nazi. And he was like Mexican or from Panama or something. Definitely not a white guy. And I looked at him, I was like, is this a thing? Is it a thing? Is it a thing? Is there a huge community of non-white white supremacists in the world?
It doesn't make any sense. It's illogical.
I mean, they could be self-loathing.
Right, yeah, and exactly. I mean, but like, are they going to be a threat? Come on, man. To me, it's laughable. And some of these narratives, like this whole thing with the trans shooter in that Christian school, and the manifesto being hidden for months and months and months and months, but then a couple of shooters, one in Buffalo, one in where was it? I think it was in Florida or something, recent shooters that they claimed were white supremacists. Yeah. And then their manifesto, their photos, all these things are out there for everybody. But that one over there, oh no. And then this guy in, like you were saying about in Texas or whatever, they said he was a white supremacist Russian or something. And he's a Mexican dude. Like, like what are they doing? And I'll tell you what it is, bro. It's problem, reaction, solution. It's them trying to create the illusion that white supremacy is a threat.
But couldn't one argue, because we started with the idea of different psyops on both sides, psyop countering another psyop. Couldn't one say that the National Trans Manifesto was a part of the psyop just to appease the other side? Because they gave you exactly what a certain group of people wanted to hear. They got validation that they were right.
Yeah, but I think that's also part of the reason why they kept it suppressed. Apparently it leaked. It was given to.
But aren't leaks always so convenient too?
Yeah, well, I mean, dude, but the thing is, and this is where it's like, well, we have to learn to discern between what's actually leaked, and this is where we get into like the media and their anonymous sources, what's actually leaked and what is really a leak, what constitutes a leak. And how you know is based on how the government and the media responds to it. Because if they go after him, dude, I mean, that's how you know. It's kind of like with Gary Webb. He ended up with 2 gunshot wounds to the head from a revolver. How do you shoot yourself twice in the head with a revolver?
Yeah, it's always interesting when you have 2 self-inflicting wounds to the head, isn't it?
So yeah, so it's like, well, then what was he investigating? What was he bringing to light? What did he refuse to back down from, and why? And then so when you look at the whistleblowers, another good example would be William Cooper, Bill Cooper, Behold a Pale Horse. Have you read that? Oh, dude, you got to check that one out. There's also another really good one that I read in prison called The Authoritarians by Jonathan M. Ward. If you want to understand the deep state and how it relates to the Constitution, that's another good one.
Wait, they have these books in prison?
Lawyer. Dude, that's what I'm saying. Like, the government could have made my life a lot worse in prison, because they sent me to a yard that had a basketball court, they had a weight pile, they had a track, they had a softball field, they had a really good library. I was able to teach metaphysics. I was in the RDAC community. I earned 6 months off my sentence. I got 6 months off for good time. So like, to a certain extent, I find it difficult to criticize them too much because I'm an objective person. And I know that if they wanted, they could have thrown me in a communication management unit where I don't get letters, I don't get phone calls. I'm stuck in 23-hour lockdown all day for the rest of my sentence. They could have done that and they didn't. So,
But you could then understand the other side, right? Where they say, all right, you were in solitary confinement and now you have this really plush stay in prison. I think he's a Fed. He's an informant now. He's working with them now. Because why would you take a guy from solitary confinement and I mean, you got a track,
I'm
you got
just
a
saying,
library.
I understand what you're saying.
You know what I mean? I'm not trying to
like the Holiday Inn here.
Yeah.
Okay, it wasn't like prisons in Norway.
Yeah.
Okay, in the Netherlands, it's not like that. It was a foam mat about this thick that had a pillow like built into it. Okay, it was very, very difficult on a number of different occasions. I'm not going to lie to you. When I was in solitary, there was a couple of times where I thought about just ending my own life because it was so hard. Okay. And I chose not to. I made the conscious choice that this will end at some point. Don't do something really stupid. Be strong, but I understand where you're coming from. However, I also wonder about it because there would have been optics to it. If they put me in some place that was really messed up, there would have been optics to it.
That makes sense too. If they put you in too harsh of a condition, then it looks too agenda based, too bias based. It's just better to keep you out of the camera, keep you away, and it still proves their narrative and proves their point, which is that this guy was a part of it and still can use you as a poster child of the insurrection.
Yeah. Even though nobody's been charged with insurrection,
which is crazy too.
Like another like Mockingbird media fallacy. Like all of their narratives are just total trash.
How are you gonna run for Congress? Because running for Congress, number one, costs money. It takes money, and once you get there, congressmen, when they start, don't make shit, make very little money. How are you gonna support yourself? Because even if you got elected, day one that you show up in Congress, people are going to show up and be like, hey, we don't like you, but now that you're here, this is what we have to offer. And if you play ball with us, your life will get better. And it's so easy to say, I'll never make a deal. It's so easy to say that before you get there. When they show up and all the other Congress people are flying first and flying private, and you're riding coach to go to the same place, when they're all staying at the nice hotel and you're not staying at the bad hotel, when they're going to a nice restaurant and you're not, eventually you're like, damn it, I just want to eat some steak tonight. It happens. They just bleed you down. How are you going to prevent yourself from becoming a part of that? Or how are you going to raise enough money where you don't have to become a part of that?
Well, number one, you don't really need money to win elections. What you need is name recognition, signatures to get your name on the ballot, and votes. You don't need money. Okay? That is part of the problem of American politics, is this belief that money is necessary. Now, obviously, I'm going to need some money for gas and food. That's why in my Newsmax interview, I said, hey, if you really want to support me while I run, then buy some of my t-shirts, buy some of my merchandise, buy my book. If you really want to just give me, contribute money to me as a person, you're welcome to just go to Give, Send, Go and help put food in my belly while I speak for the American people. I'm not going to collect campaign donations because I want my campaign to be antithetical to every single thing that's wrong with American politics. Every single thing that's wrong with the establishment. I want to be the antidote to that poison. Now, how do I stop myself from becoming one of them? A swamp monster, a deep state swamp monster? Look, bro, I make my own food anyway. I only eat organic. I'm not going to go to their restaurants. I'm not going to go hang out with them and do cocaine and have orgies. Like, I don't care about screwing prostitutes.
DC
I don't
organic
like
is
it.
really expensive. You know what I mean?
Dude, if you think eating organic is expensive, try paying for cancer treatment.
I mean, I
Either
get
pay
it.
the doctor or pay the farmer, bro.
I get it. But if we agree that there's a gamesmanship to politics, it's not all bleeding hearts to people with causes, that there's an actual game that has to be played. Because even if you get there, if you want to actually enact any sort of change, you have to at least figure out how to play the game a little bit. If you don't learn to get along, you're never going to accomplish anything while you're there anyway. Don't you have to at least learn to play the game a little bit? Otherwise, even if you want to change, no one's willing to work with you. Your one vote within Congress is meaningless. You have to get people to sign up and sign on board to what you want to do. That's just how the system works.
Even if you're a minority of one, the truth is the truth.
But you're not there to speak truth. You're there to actually enact change, which is different. Because
I understand that. But what you got to understand is this. Look at it like this. Let's say I write a single bill voting law and I bring it before the House and I make it public. Hey, guess what I got? Single bill voting law. We're going to be voting on it today. Watch and see which of your congressmen votes for and votes against.
But they do it all. But they do it all the time. They will tank Congress. They will tank a vote just because they don't like the person they're working with. Because politics is a game.
Well, hold on a second. What they haven't had is a spotlight on their corruption in quite the same way that I would bring. And it's either help the American people like you're supposed to, or be exposed as a non-government organization, a international banking cartel shill. And in all honesty, I'm doing this in a way that I'm running in the mindset that Trump is going to win in 2024, which means that he's going to need good people in the Congress that actually understand the systemic issues and are willing to change them, have the courage to put bills upon the floor that he will sign. You know what I'm saying? Not a bunch of just frivolous spending and stuff. But even if he doesn't win, we're going to need good people in the Congress.
If I put my mind,
I'm thinking decades and centuries ahead, bro.
No, I get it.
I'm not just thinking about, you know what I'm saying?
No, I get it, and I get your mission. I understand your heart, but if I put myself in the mindset of Trump, and I'm trying to go, and I have 4 years to achieve my plan, I don't know if I'm looking for people that are working outside of my agenda.
But I think that my agenda and his, at least regarding changing the system to where corruption can't reign, are synonymous.
Because I think of guys like Matt Gaetz, who the last few months has been trying to say, take down the deep state, take down the establishment. I'm not raising any campaign money. I don't have any donors. He's been saying almost very similar things, not exactly the same, but on the same, at least, wavelength. And they got rid of Kevin McCarthy, and they've been doing all these things. But the reality is, Congress has a standstill now because of it. So his idea may have been great. I agree with his ideas. But because he's not playing ball with the team, we're not advancing at all.
Well, what do you consider progress? What we've been going through over the last 10, 20, 30 years, the last 60, 70 years? Because that's not progress, bro. I mean, we're progressing toward something. We're progressing toward totalitarianism. So if you want more of the same, I'm definitely not your guy. And if you want somebody that's going to go to DC to play ball, I'm definitely not your guy. I'm going down to DC to knock the ball out of the park for the American people. And I'm not going to strike out. That's not how I operate. I am a winner, and I'm going to win one way or another. And what I mean by that is that either, let's just say for the sake of argument that I get in, right? Then I have a strategy for that. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that I get enough votes, enough signatures to run. But when it comes right down to it, I don't win the election. What I have done and what I'm doing is I am setting the bar for all congressional candidates, for all Senate candidates, all representatives, even the president, every governor and every mayor. My candidacy, what it is that I'm working to do here, is going to blow their campaigns out of the water, because the bar is going to be set so high that it's either jump or GTFO. Either reach this level or shut up. Because if you can't, look at it like this. I have literally at this point hundreds of hours worth of video where I've talked about anything and everything from global geopolitics, socioeconomics, spiritual matters, where I've talked about how to reform the education system, how to reform the prison system, how to transform the energy industry, how to transform the medical industry, how we could do all of these things, where the problems are, how we can fix them, and all that stuff. Literally dozens of hours online right now, hundreds of hours that is on my old computer, that is on my hard drive, my old hard drive. None of the congressmen that are currently in office have that. And guess what? I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to put it out there on my campaign website. And it's going to be like, here you go, dude. Measure up, bro.
I mean, I get it. I understand you. I'm 2 hours in, I'm on your side, you know? But I feel like if you're going to win, if you're really going to win, I feel like there has to be a little bit of gamesmanship. And I understand that I want to do it my way. Damn the man, I'm going to burn it all down. I get that. But you have to get there.
That's not what I'm saying at all, though.
But you know what I mean? Like, not exactly, but the attitude of that, right? Is that I have my way. I have to do it this particular way. But there is a game to politics. And I'm not saying it's a good game. I'm not saying it should be there. But you have to get there. And right now you said, I need enough signatures. That means you're not even at signature point yet. You got a while to go.
Well, I do. I just filed last week.
I know. I understand. I'm not trying to discredit you at all. I think what you're doing is brave. I do. I'm just trying to give you ideas and give you the other side and the other perspective, because I think you need to also consider.
Oh, I appreciate that. And to a certain extent, I understand exactly where you're coming from. And to a certain extent, I can see why you could be considered right. But I don't play rigged games. What I do is I change the game. And I do so because I think it was Julian Assange said that if wars can be started with lies, then peace can be started with truth. Right? Something to that effect. So the way I look at it is that, one, this is also what does it for me, dude. Like, some of the miraculous things that I've experienced on my shamanic path, like unfathomable stuff that like left me like, oh my God, like that happened. That really just happened. Like, holy crap, you know? And then the stuff that happened while I was in prison and the miraculous things that happened there. And then the stuff with like Tucker Carlson releasing that footage 3 weeks before I got, out of prison. I had no idea that was going to happen.
Did that help you get out?
No, that had nothing to do with it.
Nothing.
No, nothing. And this is why people like Matt Gaetz, I just have to roll my eyes. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I got to roll my eyes, because these people are going out there. Tucker Carlson's a hero. He got Jake out of prison. McCarthy's a hero. He released the footage. And it's like, you guys are supposed to like understand the law. You should know that if that footage had any bearing on my release, then there would be something called a court hearing. And the judge would have banged that gavel, and the media would have been all over it. You know what I'm saying? So, like, give me a break, people. You guys are supposed to be our elected officials. You're supposed to know the law, and you're going to sit out there and say these talking points that don't make any sense and make you look like a dumbass. But anyway, I think that when it comes right down to it, my faith in God plays an enormous role in this run for me, and my belief in miracles taking place. And the only way that you guarantee that you lose is if you don't try. The only way that you guarantee you fail is if you quit.
I think in doing something like politics, I think we need to incorporate some maybe business type of ideas into our lives in order to be successful, because politics has a huge business component to it. If anything, I would encourage you to find a network of people that maybe, even though you don't agree 100% with, is that it's the idea. If you're trying to build something and you do it by yourself, it's very difficult. The longest road is arduous. But if you have a group of people that have at least just one thing in common, it kind of helps propel you and move you forward a little bit more. And you get to learn while they learn, and their learning becomes your learning. And you get the opportunity to learn exponentially instead of trying to learning on your own. And I get it. It's hard for you to trust, and it's hard for you to, because the system itself is broken. I agree 100%. I agree with all your ideas pretty much. More than not. The one I don't agree with is the idea that you have to do it a certain way, because again, if the goal
Well, that's
is
what
to
you're
win,
saying to me. But that's what you're saying to me.
yeah, no, I get it. I get the hypocrisy in what I say. I do. But I'm not running for Congress. You know what I mean?
But I want you to know, I understand where you're coming from, and I'm not being thick-headed about where you're coming from. I want you to know that I have taken what you said to heart, and I'm not trying to like poo-poo it whatsoever.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, I will certainly implement a certain level of what you're saying as far as the practicality of the campaign, so that I win. I get what you're saying,
Because I would love to see
that's part of the reason why I stopped using foul language as much,
Well,
even though it's all recorded in all my other interviews anyway.
I mean, I would love to see someone like you in Congress, because I think that would really turn the whole thing upside down. I think it's like dropping a grenade and creating a bunch of chaos. I think it'd be so amazing to be a part of and watch. It's only amazing and interesting to be a part of and watch if you get there. You know what I mean? So that's why it's just throwing it out there.
Maybe just watch and see.
That'd be cool.
Because I've got all sorts of tricks up my sleeves here, bro. Like, there's a lot that I have planned coming up as far as what it is that I'm gonna do with this this website, the things I'm gonna put on it, the people I plan to talk to, dude, the pen is mightier than the sword, bro.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, what is your plan then? What are you looking at? You just announced a week ago. We're in middle of November. Do you have a timeline and what you're working at? Have you started building a team?
Yes and no. I've gotten in contact with some of the right people. I know people that have done campaigns before, and I, will ask and have asked their advice, what they think, what they would do, what happened to them last time, what are the lessons they've learned, how I should move forward, what paperwork I need to file, what's the best way to collect signatures. The best part for me is that it's just District 8 that I have to win. And yeah, that's like 800,000 people, but not all of them are registered voters. So then maybe registering them to vote under Libertarian and getting them to give me a signature might be a good strategy. You see what I'm saying? And also, it's also important to note that the system is set up the way that it's set up so that people like me can't run. You know what I'm saying?
I'm looking here.
Oh, for questions? Yeah.
No. Debbie Lesko, who is the incumbent that she's not running again, she got 96.5% of the votes in that district. Yes. That was 196.
And look at where we're at. Dude. I've lived in this district for 30 plus years. When I was a kid, it was a nice, quiet neighborhood for the most part. And now there's drive-by shootings. I hear it at night. I hear the gun, the car speeding away. There's panhandlers and homeless people. There's drug addicts everywhere. And Debbie Lesko, how long was she in office? Does it say? Isn't it like something like at least 1 or 2 decades?
I'm not sure. She's been the incumbent.
Terms.
She won the Republican primary because no one ran against her. And she won the Republican primary by having 100,000 votes. So with her gone, I would consider trying to figure out how to get on the Republican ticket, because all you got.
No, because the thing is, dude, then I'm a part of the primary.
That's true, but all you got to do is win the primary.
Well, but here's the thing, dude, is that
you know what I mean?
First of all,
it's easier to win a primary than it would to be an actual
Party
election.
with how divided it is. I would just divide it further.
I mean, I get it, but
you know what I'm trying to say?
No, I understand, but it's much easier to win a primary than it is to win a general election. And if all you gotta do in this county is to win a primary, like,
I understand what you're saying.
You know, Amigos is idealistic to think you can win an election without playing the game, political game, unfortunately. And that's how I feel. It's unfortunate. I don't want to play the game. I think you should be able to do whatever you want. I think you should do it. But I'm looking here and there's no challenger. It's a 96% R district. Most people will just go into election and they're just automatically click the R. If you really want to make a change, you got to get there. You know?
I understand what you're saying.
Not telling you what to do.
Thing, dude,
this is what I would do.
No. I gave it a lot of thought.
Yeah.
I really did. And the Republicans are part of the reason why we're in the mess that we're in. And I'm just done with them, bro. I'm just done with them, especially the establishment. And I love the MAGA people, but the thing is, bro, what I'm hearing from a lot of these MAGA people all over the country is, we got to support Trump. We got to support Trump. That's why I supported Trump. That's why Trump this and Trump that. We got to get Trump in our house. And it's all the same stuff. And it's like, dude, you're not saying anything new. You're not talking about fixing the problems. You're not even talking about what the problems really are. You're just regurgitating these talking points that all these people that you think are there to see you want to hear. And to me, it's like, okay, this isn't working. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, expecting a different result. I'm not going to do that. So then this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to look now. This is what's really interesting about this. Okay. And this is where we get into shamanism a little bit. Okay. You say you want to have fun. Yeah. So in black magic, what they do is they reverse all of the ceremonies or all of the rituals that are done in a white magic fashion or like a holy fashion. And then they reverse it. So like, for example, instead of baptizing a person in water, like in, say, the biblical Christian tradition, what the Satanists will do is they will baptize somebody in urine, blood, and feces. Okay. And then they will, instead of baptizing them in the name of God or the name of Christ or whatever, and cleansing them of their sins, they go the opposite route with it and they contaminate their body. They pledge themselves to Lucifer or to Satan. Okay. So it's the inversion of the sacred, right? You're supposed to do this. They do that, right? The political scheme, this game that you're talking about playing, is a big black magic illusion. It's an illusion that this is how you have to do it in order to win. Look at that guy that was the truck driver in Jersey that beat that in 20-something year incumbent vice president of the Senate, $5,000 budget, a single commercial. Okay. Yeah. That's how sick and tired people are of the establishment. Okay. So if he can do it, I can. And that's a Senate seat. If I'm not mistaken, that's a whole state that he has to win. Okay. So in my opinion, if I'm going to reverse the black magic spell of this political BS, then I have to do the inversion of what it is that they've done to counteract their black magic, to counteract their spell. I have to show people something real, not play the game of something fake. Does that make sense?
I agree with everything except the idea that whether or not you have to play the game. And I think it's unfortunate. I don't know if you have to. I'm not running. I don't know what I would do. I feel like I would take a very similar stance as you if I were in your situation. I want to do it my way. You know, like this thing is corrupt. I don't want to be a part of either party. I think I would want to do it your way. I feel like once I start building a team and they say, all right, this is a real thing, we're going to have some momentum. I feel like I could be convinced to play along with the game just a little bit. You know what I mean?
And I guess that's where we part ways, my friend.
Because, I mean, we start with the idea that it is a constitutional republic and it's supposed to be a constitutional republic. So we're supposed to be voting for and electing people that we feel will make the best decision on our behalf. Then if you're electing someone to make a decision on your behalf, do you want someone that has a little bit of flexibility?
Well, if it means flexibility in screwing over the people the way they've been screwed over, then no. I understand what you're saying about, playing the game so that what you need to get done gets accomplished. But that's why one of my first things is single bill voting law. Let's get that passed. Because then after that passes, every single little thing they want to spend money on, they got to do it one bill at a time, which means we're going to get a chance to look at that bill and we're not going to have to read 2,000 pages in less than 24 hours. You see? And now, we want to criminalize lobbying. So that's going to be a one-page voting bill. Okay, well, let's look at it. Oh, wow, that's pretty good. Anybody voting against criminalizing lobbying, look at that. Look at that. Oh, you trusted that person? Wasn't your constituents asking for you to do something about lobbying? And you're voting against that single bill? Because then there's no way that they can say, well, there's these other things in the bill that I don't agree with, so I'm not voting for this because it's 2,000 pages of pork belly spending. And it's like, no. That's a single bill law that says that lobbying is criminal. And that right there, that's an amendment to the Constitution that says your time is limited in Congress. And so is your staff.
Oh, yeah.
So
do you
understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think a lot of people out there, especially on the right and the more conservative side, especially the center, agree that single bill voting is the way to go. No more omnibus bills because we have no idea what they're spending money on. All you gotta do is hide in all these different programs and everyone gets paid. I get it. I understand it. Something that they've been fighting for, and that's why they've been doing this continued resolution. That's why they almost shut down the government. That's why the government's probably about to shut down again in any day now.
Wouldn't be such a bad thing, would it?
The reality is
dude, the government shuts down every holiday and every weekend, and the world doesn't end.
And reality is, we're probably going to get into January, February. They're going to do another shutdown, and then they're going to sign another omnibus bill. Because that is what they always do. They push it down the road, they kick the can, and then all of a sudden, at the finish line, after 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of government shutdown, they say, we have to open it because of your Medicare, your Social Security, and you're going to lose all your benefits. Because of that, we have to do it. And the American people get so upset at the government, and then they feel the pressure, and they sign this omnibus bill, and there you go, infrastructure.
Problem, reaction, solution.
Yeah.
They know exactly what they're doing. And that's why they haven't signed a single bill voting law. That's why it's going to be the first thing that I propose. It's going to be the first law that I write. Single bill voting. And if we have to make it an amendment, then that's what we'll do. Because that right there solves half of the problem. And then guess what? You got to do your freaking job, Congressman. That means you got to read it. And guess what? Yeah, you can read 2 to 3 to 5 pages of law or even 20 pages of law in 24 hours. So get it done. and vote on it. And I think that we should also extend that to 72 hours. And what we should also do is make those bills that are on the floor of the Congress, make those bills public for 72 hours before they're voted on, so that the public can look at it and say, this right here is what your people are voting on. If you want to know who's on your side, look at this, read this, and watch and see how they vote. And then we get to actually keep these people in line. I'm not going to DC to make a career, bro. I don't care. Do you think I want to have a career in DC in politics? Ugh. What I want to do is I want to show them how the job is done. Set the freaking standard. The bar is set high. If you can't do it, it's a funny world we live in. You got to do everything yourself, don't we?
I had an idea. I know it can't be done, but I like to entertain this idea because I think it's a really funny perspective. What if before people voted on a 2,000 vote bill, they had to take a test to prove they read it?
Oh my God. Well, I think it's a brilliant idea. But the thing is that the way that this stuff works is that they have 24 hours to read 2,000 pages.
Yeah. They're obviously not reading it.
If they're going to do something like 2,000 pages, then it's like, okay, well, then at least give us 90 days. Dude, first of all, I've written several books, okay? 2 of which are self-published, 2 of which have yet to be published because I was locked up. But anyway, one of them is like 200 and something pages. Another one is 150. Both of them took me almost a year or more to write. Okay. You're telling me that these people wrote law in 2,000 pages of it in 3 months after 9/11? Huh. And everybody just so happened to unanimously pass this Patriot Act. Well, we had a known pedophile in the Speaker of the House seat. And while we had somebody whose grandfather was Hitler's bookkeeper and financier in the White House, and whose father talked about a new world order, that's interesting to me. So no, I don't want to play that game. I want to change the game.
I like the idealistic idea.
Be a game changer, man. I'm gonna be a game changer.
I like it. I think it's entertaining. You know what I mean? Like disrupt it. Go turn it upside down. I think that's what we need. I agree 100%. I think it'll be fun. I'm excited to see what happens. I am. What if you really did pick up momentum? That'd be so crazy because I can only imagine the media blast, and that would just fuel you. So I guess for you, it's better if the media reacts in a really negative way. That's probably the best thing that can happen for you. The more they make you the boogeyman and the more hit pieces they put out there, because when I read a hit piece online and they're like, this guy is bad, I'm like, oh, I kind of like him. I don't even have to read it. I just like it, right? Because when the media sings in unison, that's when my ears go up. If it's just like one article from one company, I'm like, okay, like maybe it's true. If they all do it at the same time, I'm like, oh, I don't care what he did. Seems like a good guy, Amen, bro.
I know
and you're more likely than right if you just live that motto, which is crazy that's what we've become to.
Well, look what they did to Trump, and so it's like, okay, well, if you want to give me bad press, I mean, I promise you, I'm not going to stop, so you'll have plenty of time to do it.
What if Trump called? What if Trump called and said, hey, I heard you're running over there. You got to go run as a Republican. That's a big call. That's a big call.
I understand what
That's
you're
a big
saying.
call.
I understand what you're saying. But first of all, I've already entered my candidacy as a libertarian.
You can't make a change?
I don't think I can. I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong. I don't know.
You can't withdraw, go back in. I don't know. It seems like something that should be all done.
I think maybe I can. I don't know. I really don't know. But this is my thinking.
That's a big call, man.
I know, but
You know
dude,
what I mean?
listen, when I say nobody tells me what to
Yeah.
do, nobody can make me do anything, and I think that Trump of all people would
Mm,
respect that,
mm.
that he would like that because he's quite the same way, it seems. And I think that he'd be very happy to have somebody with that same bravado and confidence against the deep state in DC
If
along
you're
with him.
if you are a number one, then you look for the best, most qualified number twos you can find. Rarely do you be a number one and look for another competent number one. Because of the clash, because of the difference, it slows down the machine, and often it doesn't work out. So if you are a alpha number one type of guy, which Trump is, let's be real, he's gonna be looking for the most competent number twos he can find. Meaning you have to understand a little bit of chain of command to get into the universe. And if you try to say, hey, I'm not number two, I'm number one, you're probably not gonna survive.
Well, I understand where you're coming from. I would listen to his case.
Mm.
I wouldn't straight up be like, "Oh no,
I
not
don't think
doing
he's
it."
gonna come
I,
begging, man. I mean,
I
you know,
don't. Well, neither
he's
do
who he
I,
is.
dude.
Do you know
No
what I
way.
mean?
I think he's gonna try to stay as far away from me as he can. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I don't
But
know. If you get
my
the
thinking
call,
is, dude, is that I wouldn't be a number one as a VP in the White House with him. I'm sure he would want a number one inside the Congress
mm,
that can work with the White House if and when he gets it. Do you see what I'm trying to say? I'm thinking not just decades, but centuries ahead. And that also means I have to think years ahead. So I'm playing this as though Trump is going to get in 2024. That's the way that I'm thinking. If Trump's going to get in 2024, he's going to need a man in the Congress that has brass balls like he does and is willing to stand their ground, to plant themselves like a tree when the whole world says move and they say no, you move. And that's what is going to be necessary. Because here's the thing, we legislated ourselves into this mess. We can legislate ourselves out. Now, getting Trump in the White House is just a fourth of solving the problem. You need enough people in the Congress that have brass balls like Trump to change and create legislation that he will then pass. You also need enough people in the Congress that have enough courage and conviction to start impeaching corrupt judges so you can take care of the judicial. And then you're going to also need good people in the legislative to start defunding antiquated government agencies, to start voiding old antiquated laws, to start consolidating the government because it is so bifurcated and money is going everywhere that our tax dollars are being spent frivolously. So the Congress is essential. Understanding how like profound the Congress really is vital for the American people. Getting Trump in an office is really, really profound. It's very, very important. But getting good people in Congress, people like yours truly, people that are willing to beat their chest and say, not in my country. You're not going to bring your globalist stuff to my doorstep. Not in my district. That's what it's going to take.
I like it. I like the idea. I do. The points and thoughts mimic what I speak about all the time. So it's hard for me to say I disagree with your ideas. I think we just have different ways of approaching life. Final recommendation before we move on. If Trump calls, just say yes. All right? Don't be an idiot. Don't be stupid. Be like,
it's a
no.
big
If.
It's a big
There's
if.
no guarantee that it does. But if Donnie calls and he's like, you need to switch parties, we're going to make it happen, just say yes and move on with your life. Because there's bigger battles to fight always. Question.
I appreciate where you're coming from.
Question.
Okay.
When you're not being the shaman and you're not doing the things you're doing online, which is looks like you're trying to grow and trying to get out there, and obviously you're trying to run a campaign. What do you enjoy spending your time doing? What is your real life like?
I'm always being a shamanic practitioner. It's a way of life. It's not an identity. I like going on hikes. I like going to the gym. I like hanging out with my dog, hanging out with family. Um, I also like doing things like I like writing. I'm a writer. I enjoy teaching a lot. I really enjoy teaching. I'm also a painter. I like painting as well. I like clay work. I do clay work. I'm a creative type. I'm an
Hmm.
artist. You know, um,
Do you have family?
it-
Married? Kids?
no, no married, no kids. Not to say that I don't want those things,
Hmm.
but the thing is, dude, in order for me to do that, I have to be confident and I have to believe that I'm going to be bringing my children into a better world than I was brought into.
The, I used to think that. And then I had a kid. And I realized having a kid put more clarity and purpose than I ever thought before. Because now it's not about what I believe, but there's a factor of the greater good. And the greater good just feels more like not something I want to do, but something I have to do. And I think having a family and having that part of your life really balances you also. It helps you be a little more empathetic and understanding of the other side. And it's not that I'm saying I'm going to be accepting of all this crazy shit that they're doing, but I'm able to at least be understanding of a little bit more than possibly I was. I think I'm more open minded now, more open minded, but at the same time, feel more conviction. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So,
But here's the thing. But I just want you to know, I used to work with kids in group homes for 6.5 years.
mm,
So I have a very profound, I believe it's paternal instinct
mm,
to help kids and to raise children. But for me, what it comes down to is finding the right woman
mm,
to do that with. Because dude, you got to stimulate this and this. Like, I'm all for beauty, and
mm.
like, you definitely have to stimulate, my thinking are attractive. But once we get past that surface level stuff, I don't just want some bimbo that's like, I don't know, whatever you want to do, whatever you think. Oh, this is the way that I have to live. Oh, this is what I have to. I want somebody that's independent. I want somebody that can challenge my mind in a way that gets me to think, that gets me to look at things a little differently, that offers me good advice. That, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to be the one that's always teaching.
I feel like those things come and go in a relationship. Sometimes I feel like they're being really helpful and they're being supportive and they're being encouraging and they get me to think. And sometimes you hate everything about them. That's just a relationship. It's a lot of up and down, up and down. If you're looking for that, I think it's very difficult to find. I chose to marry someone
So
that I
I'm not
thought,
looking for it. Just let you know. That's why I'm not looking.
if anyone's watching or listening, just curious.
What's that?
If anyone's watching or listening and is curious.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm not. Yeah, it takes a lot for me. I have to be impressed,
Mm,
and it takes a lot to impress me.
mm. I think I feel like I'm over that part of my life. I'm very content
How old
with,
are you?
I'm 40.
Okay, see, I'm 36.
Mm, you're there. I've been married 10 years.
Oh, okay. Don't feel there. I mean, if the right woman walked into my life
Mm,
right now, of course, but my focus is saving the country, saving humanity, and saving the planet. And I have to do that. I have to. Like, it's in me, bro. I was born for this. I have to do it. And if I walk away from it, I will hate myself for the rest of my life. And I won't be happy with the person that I'm with if I feel like I didn't fulfill that responsibility.
I get it. I get it completely. But I'm a big advocate for family. I'm a big advocate for adding that component to your life because it adds balance that you don't have currently. And I think, especially because you have a very unique and fast way to think, I think having that will help you slow down your mind just enough where you're able to be a little more rational and logical with the way you think. I'm not saying that you're not, but I'm saying we could all be better with how we approach life. And I think adding that as balance is a good thing. It's something that you don't have to find the perfect person. I think marriage and family happens when you're ready and you meet someone that's ready and you guys decide you guys are ready together. And I think the rest of it you kind of work out over time. I think this idea of I need the perfect mate, I think it's bullshit. I don't think it exists. I think it comes and goes. For 2 years, you love a person. For 2 years, you hate a person. And you go back and forth as a web and up and down, up and down, up and down. That's going to happen for your whole life. If you find someone that you absolutely love and this is perfect now, just wait a year. Like, damn, I hate that girl. You know what I mean? But you've come to a collective decision together. Something I would say, don't discount so easily.
I appreciate that.
Phelps said Matt's going to hate his wife for 2 years. Maybe I already did. You know what I mean? Coming from the heart. Damn, we went a while.
Yeah, it was a good ground. It was a great conversation. We covered a lot of stuff, and I appreciate the wisdom that you imparted, and allowing me to, run. You know what I'm saying? You just run with it. That's nice.
No, I think it's awesome. I think this is what we need more of. In order to break narratives, you just have to have honest, open conversations. I think it's really hard to get a feel of someone when you watch them for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It's really difficult. And if you were someone that no one's ever heard of and we did 5 or 10 minutes, it makes sense. But in order to combat 2 years of nonstop coverage of you in Viking horns, like how do you combat that in 10 minutes? And I think if any of these news people think they're doing that, I think it's being dishonest. Because how else do you get a feel? I get a feel of how you think, how your mind works, how you put your ideas, and it makes sense. And the biggest thing that I learned is your conviction. Would you do Joe Rogan if you called? Of course you would do Joe Rogan if called. Of course.
Is that even a question?
No brainer. Someone messaged me and said, would you do Joe Rogan? Of course. Who doesn't say? Who says
Dude,
no to Joe Rogan?
I wanted to meet him for so long. I used to watch his podcast like all the time, like religiously. And the first time I ever heard about DMT was from Joe Rogan.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, dude, and I think that he and I mean, look, of course I would want to do an interview with Tucker Carlson too. I don't know why he hasn't reached out, but I think that I would have more in common and have a funner conversation. I think with Tucker, it might be more business. With Joe, it'd be like, talking to a buddy that because we have similar philosophies regarding things like, psychedelics or spirituality, or I know he's really into Bigfoot and stuff like that and aliens. I love that stuff, bro.
I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be a really interesting one. Yeah, you'd probably go for hours. I think if you went on Joe Rogan, you guys would go for hours. There's so many deep rabbit holes to go down. And
oh yeah, it'd be fun.
I think that'd be interesting. Chat, appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today. Jake, I wish you the best, man. Seriously, I hope you get there. I hope you turn it upside down. I hope you get to do it your way. Like, I am 100% rooting for you, because anyone that wants to go and disrupt the corrupt way of what they're doing, I'm for it. But I'm a lot more broad. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you guys. Yeah, and let's stay in touch. Let's communicate. And everyone else, definitely go check out Jake. Check out his website. We'll leave it on the description below. Whoever made it this far, we'll leave all the information in the descriptions. And definitely go check out Jake. Give him a follow. Hey, thank you, Matt. And can I tell you guys one last thing? Last night on the stream, people were like, we were talking about the article of you running for Congress. And the chat was like, man, that'd be so cool if we got Jake. And I said, I'll message him. And that was 2 a.m. last night, 1 a.m. last night. And I said, hey, you want to come on? And you're like, okay. And that was it. That's how it worked, for people who are trying new things.
Simple taste, bro.
Just do it. Chill. Yeah, I appreciate you, Jake. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Hey, wait. Any final thoughts? Well, how about this? Why don't you give the parting message? Because I usually do, but I give it to you.
Okay, sure. The biggest lie that we have been told by those that wish to censor us and those that wish to marginalize us, our opinions, our platforms, our beliefs, our real spiritual power, is that we are ineffective, that we do not matter, that we are unimportant. everything that you think, everything that you say, everything that you do is important. What we do in this life echoes in eternity. We need to act like it. Every decision you make, every thought you have, every word you speak makes a difference to someone, somewhere, or in some way. So imagine the kind of world we could live in and would live in if every time you had the opportunity to think an empowering thought or a disempowering thought, you chose the empowering one. Every time you had the chance to speak an empowering word to yourself or others, or a disempowering word to yourself or others, you chose to speak empowering words. Imagine if every time you had the opportunity to either act courageously or act with cowardice, you chose to act courageously. Imagine if every single individual did that. Imagine the world that we would live in, and know that it's possible. Know that's exactly what these less than 1%ers, these globalists, these new world order types that try to censor us and tell us not to talk to each other, that's exactly what they're afraid of. Us not cooperating, us saying, no, we will not comply. And no, we're not going to be violent about it either. You just don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to say. Don't tell me what to eat. Don't tell me what I can drink. Don't tell me what I can think. Because, as Americans, we used to pride ourselves in the fact that we were nothing like England. We used to pride ourselves in the fact that being an American was a sort of rough and tough lifestyle. Now we've got a bunch of snowflakes driving the bus, or at least that's the way they want it to look. That being said, final thoughts. You must be the change that you wish to see in the world. When you find inner peace, when you find a certain level of unfuckwithableness, shall we say, then there's nothing anybody can say, nothing anybody can do, nothing anybody else can think that will move you from your path. And that is the first step onto the path of enlightenment.
Thank you, everybody. See you next time.